Chapter 123. Wu Song's heart instantly softened. After all, she was his woman. How could he not protect her? Hence, he chose to believe in her. He subconsciously ignored the fact that she had already lost her primordial yin. As if he was avoiding it, he did not want to think about it. Hence, he closed the mountain gates and refused to reply. In any case, Azure Flight Sect had such a powerful mountain barrier formation. Even if that demigod sovereign really came, there was basically no need to worry. Furthermore, there was still a late-stage demigod Channing in the sect. Even the nascent soul elders who grew up with him in the sect were rather dissatisfied with his actions, yet he chose to ignore them. He repeatedly promised that he would definitely protect Azure Flight Sect and that there would not be any problems. The matter of Sovereign Zhu Yao's return, he had discussed it with his few nascent soul junior martial siblings and decided to temporarily put it aside. Although she was the official sect master, after all, she had already left for so many years. All the affairs in the sect, big or small, were all handled by Wu Song alone. And he was the one who brought Azure Flight Sect to such a large scale step by step. In the hearts of all the disciples, Wu Song was the leader of the entire sect. And Zhu Yao was merely their benefactor who saved their lives back then. Although he did this out of a little selfishness, he was not afraid that Zhu Yao would suddenly come to Azure Flight Sect, and, in order to help her own disciple vent her anger, kick him out of the sect master position. Because, as the sect master, he was the rightful one in the first place. Back then, Zhu Yao went missing, and the sect was leaderless. When he decided to take over the position of sect master, everyone had agreed to it. And he had always done it well, and everyone had gotten used to his way of doing things. However, he never expected that Zhu Yao basically had no intention of fighting him for the position of sect master. On the 7th day after returning, Elder Sesame returned. Just like that, he swaggered into the main hall in front of all the disciples. He took out the sect master's tablet. That was the sect master's tablet of the former Azure Melancholy. Mistress told me to return this to the true sect master of Azure Melancholy sect. When his words fell, the faces of the 80 or so martial siblings back then darkened. Their faces flashed with a hint of embarrassment, yet they could not find any loopholes in his words. They were Azure Flight Sect, but that was indeed Azure Melancholy Sect's sect master's tablet. For a moment, Wu Song did not know whether he should accept it or not. Sesame, however, did not care about him and simply placed it on the table beside him. Master said that when she passed by here, she saved your entire family. It was just a small effort. You're welcome. Of course, you don't have to repay me. Sesame, however, suddenly thought of something and suddenly smiled with an especially annoying smile. Oh right, is that bastard with the surname Chin here? Don't forget to tell him that I'm Master's true, pure, and natural beastie, personally approved by Master. Tell him to scram as far away as he can. If he dares to approach my master again, I will break his chicken claws. Humph. After that, he even snorted heavily, and in a flash, he disappeared before their eyes. In the instant he disappeared, another white figure suddenly appeared where Sesame was earlier. His initially elegant face revealed a hint of anxiousness as he began to search around. Why do I smell the scent of that beastie Sesame? Where's Master? Has Master returned? My lord, I'm a lonely beastie with no one to rely on. Please take me in. After saying that, his figure flashed, and he had already chased after Sesame. And the endless demonic beast roars earlier slowly faded as well, until it completely disappeared. Not a single sound could be heard anymore, and even the aura had disappeared along with it. Wu Song's heart slowly turned cold as well. In the next few days, Azure Flight was very lively. The mountain barrier formation, which had lost its protective demonic beast, was basically unable to withstand a single blow. Celestial Indus sect swaggered their way here, and the only demigod practitioner was not in the sect as well. Although Wu Song had the cultivation of a late-stage nascent soul practitioner, in terms of overall strength, he was still incomparable to Celestial Indus sect, which had 2 demigod sovereigns. No matter how much true love there was between Wu Song and Mu Meiyin, at this moment, he had no choice but to hand her over. He even had to take responsibility for the act of locking her outside the door earlier, and privately compensated them with a series of spiritual grasses, spiritual medicine, and mystic tools. However, when it was really time to hand her over, Mu Meiyin had disappeared. Wu Song was dumbfounded. The people in the sect faintly felt even more resentment towards him. On the surface, Rulu was expelled from the sect, but in reality, she had escaped. Otherwise, Celestial Indus sect wouldn't have come here to ask for her and take advantage of her at the same time. However, she was not stupid. She had long guessed that Wu Song would waver. Although she hated him, she still endured it. Her biggest cheat, Phantom, had yet to wake up. Now that she was captured, she would not be able to make a comeback for a long time. The reason why she stayed in Azure Flight was simply to wait for a chance to make a comeback. However, evidently, this place was no longer safe. It would be weird if she didn't leave. Only now did Wu Song begin to reflect on whether Yin whom he had placed in the depths of his heart, was truly sincere towards him as well. Suddenly, he recalled Zhu Yao's words. She said that she had already lost her primordialine. Azure Flight was the same as its rise, and with an unimaginable speed, it rapidly declined. Of course, Zhu Yao, who was immersed in cultivating her life skills, basically did not have the time to notice these things. Zhu Yao's goal was to create the strongest weapon in the cultivation world. However, regarding the art of artifact forging, although she knew what it was still her first time personally doing it. Actually, there were only 3 stages to all life skills: elementary, intermediate, and high. Of course, this was nonsense. Artifact forging was categorized into different levels. Those who were able to forge 1st to 3rd rank mystic artifacts were considered as elementary artificers. 4th to 7th rank were considered as intermediate artificers. 8th rank and above, including supreme-grade mystic artifacts, were considered as high-level artificers. Evidently, Yu Yin was someone who stood at the top of the pyramid. Back then, her first weapon, that fan, was a supreme-grade mystic artifact of the 3rd rank. Zhu Yao had also asked about the pile of mystic artifacts in her master's storage ring, and her master's answer was, back then, he was bored and casually made them. Since he had nowhere to put them, he casually stuffed them in. A certain someone who had always treated these things as treasures, when he found out the truth, tears began to fall. P.S. Is there anything you guys need me to bring? Tell me, though I can't send them to you one by one. But I can send a picture for you guys to take a look. Chapter 124. It turned out that his master didn't think that these things were useful at all. They were just trash that he didn't have a place to put after he finished cultivating. Why did you leave it to her in the first place? Master, come out. Let's talk about life. I've placed some refining materials in that ring. It should be able to support you in raising your refining skills to a high level. Yu Yin casually interrupted. Only then did Zhu Yao recall that in the corner of the ring, there seemed to be a huge pile of blackened objects. Back then, she had thought that they were some useless things, and was planning to find a time to throw them away. So that was the real thing that her master had left for her. Actually, she couldn't be blamed. Anyone who saw a pile of glittering high-grade magic tools and magic treasures would notice that the charcoal-like material was the real thing, and the rest were just trash that hadn't been sorted out. Zhu Yao's heart felt a little stifled. Master, is there anything else you haven't told me? Can you say it all at once? The white figure on the jade pendant was stunned. After a while, he said, in addition to refining materials, there are also talisman papers for making talismans, formation chests for setting up arrays, and unhatched demon beast eggs from the 1st to the 8th rank. But since you already have a demon beast, I don't think these will be of any use. Zhu Yao was instantly dumbfounded. Was her master trying to nurture her into an all-rounder? There was too much information. She needed to take a break. Yu Yin, on the other hand, had a determined look. As a qualified master, naturally, he would not keep anything to himself. Whatever skills he knew, he would naturally teach it all to his disciple. It was definitely not because he was bored after waiting for 16,000 years, so he collected these for fun. Definitely not. Formations, taming beasts, Crafting talismans and refining tools are all available. Why aren't you refining pellets? Zhu Yao suddenly realized this problem. There's no need for you to learn the path of pellet refinement. Yu Yin frowned. He still politely declined medicinal pellets and the like. Why? Zhu Yao had wanted to ask this question a long time ago. Her master seemed to especially hate medicinal pellets. In the past, he had always said that they were not beneficial to her cultivation. It didn't seem to be a problem for other people to eat pills when they were cultivating. Why would she be affected? Yu Yan's expression turned even colder, and he did not reply for a long while. Just when Zhu Yao thought that he would not reply her, he suddenly coldly said, "When I formed my Azoth core..." Was he going to tell a story? I once met a female cultivator. Zhu Yao's expression instantly turned ugly, and 100 curses instantly surfaced in the depths of her heart. What demon? She's an alchemy grandmaster. Yu Yin frowned deeply. His face was filled with displeasure. She told me that she can give me an Azoth transformation pellet to aid me in forming my Azoth core. The condition is... What? Zhu Yao's heart instantly lifted. Yu Yan's expression was already cold to the point where ice shards were about to fall. The corner of his lips twitched, as though he had thought of something that was hard to speak of. Even Zhu Yao was beginning to imagine a scene in her mind, a male and female action movie. Only then did he speak up. The condition is to let me hold her hand. That's it? Did she hear wrongly? Or did he literally mean to hold hands? Yu Yin turned to look at her, with a "isn't this enough" look on his face. Damn, she had already prepared a pair of scissors, and you're telling me that there's nothing between you two? Zhu Yao instantly felt like lighting a candle for that female practitioner. Will you die if you pull it? No. Yu Yin honestly replied, but it's very dirty. Where is it dirty? How could she not know that her master was a germaphobe? When she went up the mountain, there was mud on her shoes. What did holding hands have to do with shoes? It's not like she was pulling her feet. There's mud on my shoes every single day. I'm sorry, I made you dirty for so many years. You're different. Yu Yin replied confidently. You're my disciple. Thank you. She was not happy with this reason at all. You're welcome. The hell? Say another word. Do you believe that I won't gang rape you? Zhu Yao took a deep breath, and only then did she reluctantly accept such a ridiculous reason. Just because of this, you've never eaten medicinal pellets? Something cultivated by unclean people is naturally unclean as well. Yu Yin had a matter-of-fact look, and then he even solemnly reminded her. You can't eat them either. Great God, kneel down. Those food safety organizations should have invited you over. They would have definitely done their job properly. The topic regarding medicinal pellets had temporarily come to an end. Zhu Yao was afraid that if they continued talking, she would once again have the thought of deceiving her master. She took out the smelting furnace and then threw the low-grade profound iron in her hands into it. She had only found out today that there was actually a teleportation formation at the bottom of the cold pond. It could directly teleport her to the depths of the ocean, where the lava of an underground volcano was. And the lava here was located above the spiritual vein, and the intensity of the fire was infinitely close to the 9 heavens' divine flames. Mystic tools smelted here could expel even more impurities and raise the grade of the finished product. Zhu Yao's first smelting was undoubtedly a failure, because the temperature was too high. When Zhu Yao threw a basin-sized profound iron in, it did not even produce a single bubble, as it instantly melted. Zhu Yao, you need to use spiritual energy to envelop it before you can smelt it. Yu Yin reminded at the side. Only then did Zhu Yao take out another piece. Using fire spiritual energy to envelop the profound iron, she slowly moved it in. This time, it was a little better. Although the profound iron still instantly melted, at the very least, a red residue was left behind. However, with such a small piece, at the very most, it could be used to make a rather spiritual embroidery needle. Zhu Yao did not give up, hence, she tried it a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time. When she had almost used up a large half of this low-grade profound iron, only then did she slowly regain the feeling. Furthermore, the spiritual energy she used every time was different, and the results of smelting were different as well. In the beginning, she used fire spiritual energy. Later on, she tried metal spiritual energy, and evidently, the results were much better than fire spiritual energy. And the angle of smelting every time. The location where the spiritual energy was enveloped was different as well. After grasping these, she began to learn how to forge. There were ready-made tools in the smelting cave, which were left behind by her master. Firstly, she had to hammer out a rough shape. Of course, the most important thing was to remove the impurities inside. This was a purely physical task, and every time she hammered, she had to carry spiritual energy. Zhu Yao was a demigod stage practitioner. She did not have anything else, but her spiritual energy was extremely abundant. Hence, this step was not difficult for her. Yu Yin would occasionally appear as well, and would occasionally give her a few pointers. However, most of them were, "There's no need to hammer this one, because it's already useless. This one's useless again. This one will still be useless. Why don't you lie down for a while?" What happened to the most basic trust between master and disciple? Are you here to teach me how to forge weapons, or are you here to tear me down? Yet, he even said it with a serious look, smashing her self-confidence piece by piece. Zhu Yao decided to go out for a breather. After all, staying by the side of a volcano every single day was indeed not very comfortable. However, she never expected that Yu Ying would be waiting for her at the side of the cold lake. Seeing that she had appeared, he was evidently very happy, and even his eyes had shone a little. However, his expression was still the same as before, without much of an expression. Zhu Yao could not help but feel an itch in her hands. Pinching his expressionless little face, she forcefully pulled it to the two sides. Finally, a manual smile surfaced on his face. "Yu Ying, are you obedient?" Yu Ying felt a little pain from being pinched, yet he did not struggle, and simply nodded towards her. After pondering for a moment, he added, "Be obedient." Only then did Zhu Yao satisfyingly put down her hands. "Master." Yu Luo sensed that she had come out as well, and flew over on her sword. "Have you come out of closed-door training?" "Nope, I just came out for a breather. I'll head back in a moment." After Zhu Yao said that, Yu Luo and Yu Ying were evidently a little disappointed. Yu Ying even lowered his head, took 2 steps closer, and reached out his hands to hug her thighs. Yu Ying grew taller. Zhu Yao compared for a moment, and suddenly realized little Yu Ying had already reached the height of her waist. In the past, he was clearly only at the height of her thighs. It has already been 5 years. Naturally, he grew taller and bigger. Yu Luo explained with a smile. Zhu Yao was a little shocked. She did not expect that 5 years would have passed after he won a forge iron. The difficulty was much higher than soy sauce. Gratifyingly stroking Yu Ying's little head, she then looked towards Yu Luo in front of her and casually asked, "What about you?" Yu Luo was startled for a moment, and only after a moment did she understand what her master was referring to. She slowly smiled, and her face was filled with a relieved expression. "I have long thought things through, and the past is already in the past. As a practitioner of deity cultivation, how can I always be trapped in the past?" It was good that she had thought things through. Zhu Yao raised her thumb up and gave her a thumbs up. "As expected of my disciple." Yu Luo shook her head with a smile. Suddenly, as though she had recalled something, she mimicked Zhu Yao's tone and said, "Furthermore, Azure Flight Sect's current situation, I'm afraid, just like what Master said, knowing that he's not doing well, I feel at ease." When had she ever said something like that? She clearly said, "Take his life while he's down. Apui, it's good for you, good for me, and good for everyone." Actually, she could somewhat guess Azure Flight's situation as well. Back then, when she returned that tablet, it was because she no longer wanted to care about that side. Back then, the cultivation method of that group battle was indeed not comprehensive. Though their cultivation could be raised together, there was a huge problem. It was dependency. Everyone was used to working together, and subconsciously, they would ignore things that they were not good at. Her original plan was to wait until everyone had built their foundation before rearranging the formation in order to prevent such limitations from appearing. However, before she could make it in time, Wu Song's matter happened. Actually, She had thought that Wu Song's matter was unrelated to the other little radishes. If the other little radishes still had the slightest bit of respect for her position as the sect master, in their hearts, they would definitely come and ask her about this matter. However, she had placed that communication talisman by her side for so many days, and not a single one of the 83 little radishes had contacted her. This more or less caused her heart to turn a little cold. Most probably, they no longer needed her as their guide. That was why she returned that tablet. However, regarding the matter of Sesame dispersing all of the formation guarding demonic beasts and seducing Qianning away, Zhu Yao was completely unaware of it. This was all caused by Sesame alone. That was why Sesame did not dare to appear in front of her when she came out for a breather this time, afraid that he would expose himself. Chapter 125. Zhu Yao did not stay outside for long. After instructing Yu Luo to teach Yu Ying how to cultivate, she once again returned to the smelting cave and began her daily smithing work. Initially, she had thought that smithing was a simple matter, especially to a demigod stage practitioner like her. However, in reality, she realized that it was basically not that simple. The smithing of a mystic artifact was not something that could be formed simply by hammering with spiritual energy. The first batch of semi-finished products she forged were basically all trash. Only one of them still retained a strand of spiritual energy, but at the very most, it could only be used to ward off ghosts and exorcise evil. If she wanted to use it to defend against enemies, it was basically a joke. Zhu Yao was a little disheartened. She clearly hammered harder than anyone else, yet the result was worse than anyone else's. If she were to compare smithing to education, she was currently at the kindergarten level at the very most. Master, why is it like this? She had clearly worked so hard. Every single material has its own attribute, and mystic artifacts do as well, Yu Yin lightly explained. The amount of spiritual energy a material can absorb is limited as well. You're saying spiritual energy of the same attribute must be used in order to forge a mystic artifact. Yes and no. Yu Yin continued. The key lies in what kind of mystic artifact you want to forge it into. In other words, if it was a flying mystic artifact, then it must have sufficient wind spiritual energy. If it was a water attribute mystic artifact, then it must have water spiritual energy. I understand. Zhu Yao once again began to smelt the other piece of profound iron. This time, she did not forge it like before, where she hammered it randomly. Instead, she gathered a strand of wind spiritual energy, and with every hammering, she smashed it into the mystic artifact. However, the strange thing was, although the wind spiritual energy had already been transferred over, the amount absorbed by the iron was very little. Zhu Yao guessed that it was related to the speed at which this piece of iron absorbed spiritual energy. Hence, for the second time, she reduced the output of spiritual energy. As expected, the amount of spiritual energy absorbed this time was the same as before. This time, Zhu Yao spent 4 to 5 times the amount of time compared to before, and she had even repeatedly smelted it. Holding onto the shape that had already been forged, Zhu Yao could even feel the abundant wind spiritual energy on it. Zhu Yao could finally proceed to the next step, inscribing formations. Formations were her forte. A flying mystic artifact naturally needed a flying formation. This time, Zhu Yao was no longer greedy and only imprinted a single formation. In an instant, the flying sword's embryonic form, which was still overflowing with spiritual qi, suddenly converged and was firmly locked inside by the formation. The wind spiritual qi in the air seemed to be getting closer to the sword. Zhu Yao did not let her guard down during the final step of polishing it into shape. Following the trajectory of the formation, under the precondition that it did not harm the spiritual energy, he slowly polished the smooth blade. Finally, her first weapon took shape. Zhu Yao was a little excited. After all, this was the first completed weapon she had made. Though it was just the most basic flying sword, she eagerly presented it to her master. Yu Yin slightly narrowed his eyes, scanned the body of the sword for a while, and then made a sound. First ranked. Low grade. Zhu Yao's glass heart instantly shattered onto the ground. What happened to the promise of accompanying her disciple to raise her self-confidence? Forget about a level 1 magic tool. It's a flying magic tool anyway. She didn't have much expectation for it since she could ascend to the heavens at the first level. But low grade, damn it, she didn't believe that she couldn't make a high-grade magic tool. Zhuya once again threw herself into frantically leveling up her life skills. She had already grasped the correct method to refine artifacts, and the success rate of Zhu Yao's forging had evidently increased. Only when she was finally able to refine low-grade profound iron into a second-ranked substandard mystic tool did she give up on this material. She began to refine higher-grade materials. Days passed just like that as she hammered and hammered. Zhu Yao believed that practice makes perfect, and she had already found a few tricks. And when she was inscribing formations, she could already inscribe 2 formations at the same time. She did not know how long had passed, but when she was refining an ice stone that could refine a 5th-ranked mystic tool, she suddenly realized that the spiritual energy she injected into the material would actually be distributed in a line shape. And, with every refinement, the number of lines would increase. When her refinement reached a standard that could be used normally, she realized that the lines had yet to fill up half of the material. This was a pleasant surprise. Could it be that after filling up all the lines, the mystic tool's spiritual energy capacity would be its limit? After having this thought, Zhu Yao did not stop her refinement. Instead, she continued to inject spiritual energy into the material and slowly filled it up. The illusory figure floating above the jade pendant sensed his disciple's abnormality. He glanced at the familiar figure, and the corner of his lips twitched a little. He finally understood. As expected, it's his Amen, that. Zhu Yao excitedly filled the entire piece of metal with spiritual energy, thinking that she would definitely be able to create an incredible mystic tool this time. She failed. The material was destroyed, because she realized that, although it was filled with spiritual energy, there was no more space to inscribe formations. And she even thought of the polishing process at the back. If she were to accidentally damage it even by a little bit, the spiritual energy inside would completely disperse because of a small crack. She was only concerned with injecting more spiritual energy into it to raise the grade of the mystic tool, and actually did not think of this at all. No matter how much spiritual energy there was, without the guidance of a formation, it was just a piece of scrap metal. Zhu Yao's heart felt stifled. With a little heartache, she abandoned this ice stone that was filled with spiritual energy. She once again took out the same material and continued to refine. This time, she did not blindly inject spiritual energy and arrange them into lines. She drove the spiritual energy to the 2 sides and left a spot in the middle to inscribe a formation. Although the spiritual energy was lesser now, she spent even more time. In the first place, injecting spiritual energy was a huge project, let alone after injecting the spiritual energy and arranging them according to her own thoughts. This was the first time Zhu Yao felt a little powerless. She spent a lot of effort before she managed to arrange the spiritual energy properly. When it came to inscribing the formation, it was much simpler. However, when it came to the polishing process, it was another difficult problem. No matter how careful she was, there was still a small crack, and the spiritual energy instantly dispersed completely. Zhu Yao felt a wave of heartache. Finally, after a dozen or so failures, she created a successful product. Although it was only a 4th-ranked mystic tool, it was of high quality. As expected, hard work would always be rewarded. Most probably, she would be able to create an exquisite one the next time. Just when she was about to continue, she realized that she had used up all of the ice stones. She could only use another type of black, or that was of the same grade as it. However, when she was forging, she realized a huge problem. Those lines that represented spiritual energy had disappeared. Flip's table. How was she supposed to continue? Zhu Yao once again took out various materials and tested them one by one. Other than the ice stones, there really weren't any other spiritual energy lines. Zhu Yao was a little dumbfounded. After taking a few deep breaths, she finally calmed down and thought about the reason. Logically speaking, these materials used to forge mystic tools should be able to withstand spiritual energy. Just what was the difference between the ice stones and the others? After thinking about it carefully, Other than the color, there wasn't much difference. Color? Could it be that the reason was because the white color was more translucent, allowing her to see it more clearly? Ho-ho, stop joking. Zhu Yao did not believe it herself. If that was the case, the other stones could not be seen with the naked eye, and divine sense? The hell, divine sense could really see it. Did the reason have to be so simple and crude? Zhu Yao, who was still panicking earlier, was momentarily a little speechless. Silently picking up the hammer, she released her divine sense and continued to arrange the lines. The higher the grade of the mystic tool, the more spiritual energy it required, and the more time it would take. Initially, Zhu Yao thought that with her demigod stage cultivation as a foundation, injecting spiritual energy like this was basically a piece of cake. Until the first time her spiritual energy was exhausted, she was still holding onto a half-completed 6th-ranked mystic tool. Only then did she realize how much spiritual energy was required for life skills that she had never placed importance on. She had no choice but to meditate to recover her spiritual energy. And after that, such incidents happened more and more frequently. When she was finally able to forge an 8th-ranked mystic tool, she had exhausted all of the spiritual energy in her body twice. She finally understood why everyone would always need to go into closed-door training when they were refining pellets or forging mystic tools. In this kind of situation where spiritual energy was completely exhausted, if she were to still wander around outside, she would be a target that could be instantly killed at any moment. Master, there's no more stock. Zhu Yao glanced at the storage ring. There was a large amount of materials piled inside, and they had already been completely used up by her. However, she had just managed to forge an 8th-rank mystic tool, and it was even a low-grade one. Yu Yin frowned, and only after a while did he slowly say, "You can smelt the mystic tools inside?" The mystic tools inside. Zhu Yao glanced at the ring on her hand, and suddenly widened her eyes. Master, you can't be referring to the pile of mystic tools you've refined, right? Nodding. Zhu Yao instantly felt like flipping the table. Those were all 8th-ranked and above, and most of them were 10th-rank mystic tools. Smelting them just like that. You wastrel. Yu Yin, however, had a calm look. Those things were materials in the first place, and he had merely refined them out of boredom. It was only right for him to return them to materials. Are you really going to smelt them? Imin. Oh, her heart ached. She couldn't even bear to throw away that 1st-ranked flying sword. Master, why are you so generous? Zhu Yao pondered for a moment. Her refining skills had to be raised, but to smelt these high-grade mystic tools, after hesitating for a long while, Zhu Yao's hands trembled as she picked out a few mystic tools that were relatively weaker and began to smelt them. As she smelted them, her blood was dripping. It was because she had gone deep into refining mystic tools that she could see just how precious these mystic tools were. Putting aside the materials, just the intricacies of the formations on them were completely not any simpler than the Great Mountain Barrier formation that she could not understand no matter how hard she tried. They were a perfect mystic tool that could be used for both offense and defense, and some of them even had storage functions. They were completely offensive and defensive mystic tools. Oh, her heart ached. Probably because of the guilt she felt from destroying top-grade mystic tools, Zhu Yao was even more diligent in her subsequent refinements. Although there were mystic tools that were of relatively lower quality, fortunately, no useless products appeared. She was already able to inscribe dozens of different formations on them. The mystic tools she refined had broken through to the 9th-ranked as well. When the mystic tools in her ring were more or less depleted, she finally refined a 10th-ranked mystic tool, though it was still a low-grade one. Zhu Yao felt that it was time for her to stop and get down to business as she voiced out her initial thoughts. Master, I want to make a special mystic tool. We need a very smooth material. What do you think we should use? Chapter 126. When Zhu Yao officially came out of closed-door training, it was already 100 years later. When he walked out of the cold pond, he saw an unfamiliar man dressed in black standing there. He was very tall, but his face was very delicate and handsome. His expression was somewhat wooden. She did not know if it was because of that shadow, but she instinctively disliked black-clothed people. Although the other party was just an Azoth stage practitioner, Zhu Yao could not help but frown. The Jade Forest Mountain had never allowed outsiders to enter, and the occasional visitors could only be sent by ZMO to look for her. However, he wasn't wearing the uniform of ancient hill sect. Could it be that in the 100 years she was in closed-door training, the sect had changed their uniforms? Who are you? The man seemed to be stunned for a moment. His eyes, which had been shining a moment ago, dimmed quite a bit. However, he walked straight towards her. Zhu Yao frowned. She was a little dissatisfied with his silence. However, seeing that he did not have any ill intentions, she did not back off. The man stopped when he was only half a step away from her. I say, isn't it a little too close? Even if you're tall, you don't have to show off like this. Before she could finish her sentence, he reached out and hugged her impolitely. He hugged her so tightly that she could feel his heartbeat. Zhu Yao was instantly dumbfounded. Were all youngsters nowadays so open-minded? Probably because she was overly shocked. Zhu Yao had completely forgotten to resist. The man became even more presumptuous. He bent his body slightly and tilted his face. He rubbed her hair gently with an intoxicated look on his face. His warm breath brushed the side of her face. Zhu Yao, who had only teased her iceberg master in her entire life, was being teased by someone else for the first time. Her face instantly flushed red, not knowing whether it was because she was scared or embarrassed. But in the next moment, it immediately cooled down, and it was the kind of chill that penetrated his heart. Master, listen to my explanation. Her palm instantly emitted out a bone-piercing cold aura, which instantly enveloped her entire body. It was so cold that Zhu Yao shivered, and as if it was a conditioned reflex, she pushed the man in front of her away. He pushed it too hastily, so it carried a little bit of spiritual energy. You. Who are you? Zhu Yao clenched her palms, which were about to turn stiff. She was holding onto the jade pendant, which allowed her to communicate with her master. When he just came up, he couldn't bear to put it into his ring, so he held it in his palm. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a situation as soon as they arrived? Instantly, they felt as if they had been caught in the act. The man was pushed back 2 steps by her. He seemed to be injured. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. However, he continued to stare at her. His gaze was so deep that it made her flustered, as if she was the only one left in the world. He paused for a moment, then approached her again. Fuck. What are you doing now? Zhu Yao felt that the cold aura, which had dissipated with great difficulty, had once again begun to spread. Neither of them were easy to deal with. Zhu Yao had a guarded look, and this time, the man did not pounce on her again. He stopped a step away from her, and with lightning speed, he pulled onto the corner of her robe. Why does this action look so familiar? Yao. The man let out a voice. His voice was as clear as the gurgling of spring water. Huh. What did that mean? The man's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at her even more attentively. He once again called out, Yao, what do you want? Sister. Yao sis. Damn it. She finally knew who this person was. Yuing? The man's eyes instantly shone as he nodded. Zhu Yao sized Yuing up for a moment. Yuing, who was already a head taller than her, was instantly in disbelief. This was that skinny little wimp from back then. He looked pretty sturdy. Huh? What did he eat to grow up? She was faintly unable to accept it. But when she thought about it, 100 years had already passed. If he was immortal, he would most probably have reincarnated. It was understandable that he was just a little taller. Not bad, little brat. You formed your Azoth core so quickly. Recognizing the person in front of her, Zhu Yao's nervousness completely disappeared. Activating her familiar mode, she placed her palm on his shoulder and planned to discuss with him the huge problem of whether humans could develop stably. I have something to discuss with you. Yuing still did not like to speak, and simply looked at her. My name is Zhu Yao. In the future, can you not call me brothel sis? Call me Big Sis Zhu, or add one more word, Big Sis Zhu Yao. Will you die? Having a master who called her desire every day was already enough. Why did he have to call her a brothel sis now? Don't make her doubt her parents' taste, hey? Yuing was startled by her sudden outburst of anger. A moment later, he awkwardly moved the corner of his lips and made a Zhu Yao sound. Zik. Yao, big sis. Scram. Zhu Yao raised her hand and slapped on his head. This unbearable child. He must have done it on purpose. Ewing was not angry either. He simply reached out his hand to rub his head that was hurting from the slap, and the expression he used to look at her with became even more serious. "Where's Yu Luo?" Zhu Yao casually asked. Pulling Yu Ying's hand, she held onto his wrist, checked his injuries, and helped him heal a little. Earlier, she did not recognize him and subconsciously pushed him, causing him to suffer some light injuries. Yu Ying's gaze shifted from her face to his hand that was being grabbed and blankly replied her. "Great Hall? Great Hall? Main Mountain? Why was she going there?" Ewing nodded. Zhu Yao frowned, faintly sensing that something had happened. After carefully sensing it, there were indeed many unfamiliar presences in the direction of the Great Hall, and she could faintly sense that those presences were extremely strong. What happened? Ewing did not know either. Zhu Yao hesitated for a moment and decided to head over to take a look. Just as she flew up with her sword, she realized there was an additional figure next to her. "Why are you following me?" Zhu Yao glared at Yu Ying at the side. Together. No. She could sense that the great hall in front was filled with nascent soul stage practitioners. Almost all the nascent soul stage practitioners of the sect were already there. Usually, in situations like this, they would only be summoned if the sect had sent out a huge matter. "It's not safe in front. Stay here and be obedient." Ewing frowned, yet he did not obediently return. Instead, he flew closer to her on his sword and reached out his hand to grab onto the corner of her clothes. Zhu Yao. It had already been 100 years. Was this bastard's Oedipus complex not cured yet? What's the use of having such a huge stature? Zhu Yao sighed. She could not be bothered with him and immediately flew towards the great hall of the main mountain. Her appearance evidently made the people in the hall feel a little more at ease. ZMO even stood up with a joyous expression. "Senior Martial Ant, you're out of closed-door training?" Yu Yao stood right next to ZMO and happily bowed towards her as well. "Master." Zhu Yao finally knew why she was here. She had already recovered her nascent soul stage cultivation. Amen. After taking a closer look, she realized that there were many people in the hall. Not only were the nascent soul stage reverends of the entire sect present, even Feng Yi and another demigod sovereign were all present. This was basically a gathering of heroes. Zhu Yao first greeted the demigod sovereigns of her own sect before bringing Yu Ying along, and immediately sat down on the main seats. Looking around, she realized that there were even more nascent soul stage reverends from the other sections. Seemingly, the nascent soul stage elders of the various sects and clans were all present. It was even more spectacular than during the inter-sect tournament back then. Furthermore, there were old acquaintances as well. Wu Song brought along a few nascent soul stage radishes, and they were seated not far away from her as well. However, his eyes no longer had the high spirits he had when he came to cancel the engagement back then. His brows were gradually tainted with a hint of melancholy, most probably because of the trifling matters of the sect in recent years. His eyes, however, had been staring at Yu Yao, who was behind ZMO, with a complicated expression. Though, Yu Yao had a calm expression, and she did not even notice him at all. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief, and it seemed like she had completely let go of everything. "Reverend ZMO, I feel that what the Celestial Indus sect elders said is correct. In the first place, the purpose of the inter-sect tournament is to allow the relationships between the sects to grow closer." A tall and skinny man stood up. "In the past, when it was held in your esteemed sect, it was merely a verbal agreement between everyone." "That's right." Another nascent soul stage man responded as well. "It didn't say that it had to be held in Ancient Hill sect, right? Since Ancient Hill sect was able to hold it, naturally, the other sects are able to hold it as well." "That's right." Another person stood up. Celestial Indus sect is a large deity sect as well, and it's not any weaker than Ancient Hill sect. It's the same even if it's held there. So it was because of the matter of where the inter-sect tournament would be held. Zhu Yao frowned. In the past, Every single intersect tournament would be held in Ancient Hill Sect, and this had already become a common practice in the cultivation world. Although holding this intersect tournament did not bring any actual benefits to Ancient Hill Sect, to a deity sect that cherished their reputation, it was still a huge matter to raise their reputation. This was also one of the reasons why Ancient Hill Sect was known as the #1 sect in the cultivation world. If they were to suddenly hand it over to another sect, wouldn't that be a direct slap to their faces? That's not right. As expected, ZMO would not agree to it. In the past, the intersect tournament had always been held in my sect, and I believe everyone is clear about this. Although my sect has worked hard for so many years, putting aside our contributions and hard work for now, I believe everyone is already used to it. Now, you're suddenly not willing to hold the tournament in my sect. Is it because you feel that this Mu is not taking good care of you? As expected of ZMO, who had been the sect master for so many years. His words were full of obstructions, and when translated into human words, it would be, "You've worked hard to serve everyone for so many years, contributed money and effort, and even worked so hard without collecting any fees. Not only that, you're still turning your back on me?" As expected, the moment these words came out, the expressions of the few people who spoke earlier turned a little ugly. Sect Master Mu. The sect master of Celestial Indus sect was finally unable to sit any longer as he stood up. Ancient Hill Sect has been hosting the intersect tournament for so many years. Naturally, we have worked hard and contributed a lot. In the past, the other sects had the heart, but were powerless. However, now that our sect has the power to host it, we wish to take it on. This can be considered as sharing some of Ancient Hill Sect's burdens. When translated into human words, it would be, "It's too tiring for you to handle things alone. Let me help you." ZMO smiled. Celestial Indus sect's kind intentions, this Mu appreciates it. However, ever since 10,000 years ago, Ancient Hill Sect has never once delayed the intersect tournament. I believe, in the future, when it comes to the intersect tournament, it will still be easy. When translated into human words, it would be, "You don't have to worry blindly, we can handle it." The sect master of Celestial Indus sect was stopped for a moment, and his expression instantly turned ugly. Initially, the reason why he had gathered so many sects to talk about this matter was to give Ancient Hill Sect some face. Who knew that this ZMO's words were watertight, and instead, it made them seem a little unreasonable. Chapter 127. The scene fell into a stalemate. Why waste your breath on him? Suddenly, a disdainful and arrogant female voice resounded in the great hall. The tone carried the pressure of a demigod. At the center of the great hall, a black arc appeared and slowly expanded into a circle. This was a mystic art that could tear through space only a demigod could. Everyone present could not help but be stunned. A moment later, a human figure stepped out from within. "I'll listen to whoever's stronger." These words were said especially arrogantly, yet the pressure of a demigod in her words caused people to be unable to muster any thoughts of resistance. Even ZMO simply tightened his fists and did not refute. 3 people walked out from the shattered space, and all 3 of them were familiar faces. The first to walk out was a woman dressed in a fiery red robe. A cold smile hung on her lips, and the 3 letters bug on her face were as black as an engraving. Mu Meiyin. Even Zhu Yao was a little shocked. 100 years ago, she was still at the middle stages of nascent soul, and now, she was already a demigod. The aura she sensed from her body was not much different from hers, and it even faintly suppressed her. Zhu Yao stared at the black shadow that had already fused with her. It was even denser than before, and it was emitting out a terrifying black aura. In the past, she did not know what that was. Recently, however, because she was learning how to refine artifacts, she was especially sensitive to auras, which was why she could barely recognize that it was actually an aura of extreme Yin. Other than her, no one else could see that black shadow. She did not know why, but she could sense that the black shadow had been staring at her. It was as though something cold was seeping out from the bottom of her feet, and it was extremely cold. Zhu Yao intentionally ignored that black shadow like the others. However, The feeling of being stared at grew deeper. The two sovereigns are here. The sect master of Celestial Indus sect, however, had an excited and complacent look as he welcomed them. Sovereign Chihan, Sovereign, Rulu, Junior Marshal Sister Hanxing. He greeted them one by one, however. When he saw Mu Meiyin, a hint of awkwardness flashed past his face. After all, the sovereign in front of him was once his daughter. And back then, he was the one who personally chased her out of the sect. However, who would have thought that she would break through into a demigod 100 years later, and even return to Celestial Indus sect as though she did not care about the past? Looking at the sect master of Celestial Indus sect, Zhu Yao was able to guess a little. No sect would reject a demigod stage practitioner, even if they had grudges in the past. The reason why Mu Meiyin had been hiding all these years was probably because the shadow had yet to recover. Now that Black Shadow's abilities were stronger than before, she naturally rose to the soul formation stage with her golden finger. Could it be that she had changed her weak personality and become so arrogant? This must be her true nature. Things were getting more and more difficult. Yenner, Wu Song stood up, his face filled with disbelief as he looked towards Mu Meiyin. His expression changed into an indescribably complicated one. However, Mu Meiyin merely turned her head and looked at him with a look of disdain. With a cold snort, as if she had done something, blood flowed out from the corner of Wu Song's mouth. His face turned pale, and he sat down while choking. Zhu Yao frowned. As expected, she had always been using Wu Song, right? However, Wu Song deserved it. Turning his head to look at Yu Hanxin, who was following behind Chihan, he could not help but sigh. Sure enough, the female lead and supporting actress were natural enemies. Mary Sue versus Green Tea Bitch? She really wanted to watch the show. However, from the looks of it, the Black Shadow would definitely not let her go. Just like all Mary Sue settings, Yu Hanxin had an astonishingly beautiful face. Zhu Yao was almost unable to recognize that she was that thin and weak child from back then. However, her exquisite face looked a little haggard. It seemed like after Mu Meiyin rose to the demigod level, she had become a demigod. He had caused her a lot of trouble. He could not help but turn to look at Yuing. His face was calm, and his eyes did not even move. He kept looking down at her. But was he going to acknowledge his relatives? Are you your biological sister? Or a sister? Zhu Yao realized a problem in hindsight. Which was bigger, Yu Hanxing or Yuing? In the immortal cultivation world, strength is everything. Mu Meiyin's gaze went past Zmo and directly landed on Zhu Yao. The corner of her lips revealed a hint of a cold smile. Didn't Ancient Hill sect possess 3 demigod sovereigns in the past, and was hailed as the #1 deity sect in the cultivation world? Currently, our Celestial Indus sect has 3 demigod sovereigns as well. The #1 position is going to change hands soon, right? Zemo's expression instantly darkened. What do you mean by known as? With the strength of his Ancient Hill sect, did he still need to boast about himself? This sovereign, Zemo laughed out of extreme anger. The so-called #1 deity sect is merely an empty title. Our sect has been established for so many years, and this empty title is merely a nickname given to us by fellow Taoists out of respect. Our sect's name is Ancient Hill, yet we have never had the intention to change it. Naturally, we will not take a mere title as our own either. His words sounded humble, however. In reality, he was mocking Celestial Indus sect. If translated into human words, it would be, what #1 deity sect? It's all forcefully given to us by others, and we don't even want it. Yet, you treat it like a treasure, and even shamelessly come to snatch it from us. Although Mu Meiyin had lived 2 lives, in terms of words, how could he compare to a sect master who had lived in the world for thousands of years and had cultivated the art of human relationships to perfection? For a moment, she was rendered speechless as she widened her eyes and stared straight at Zmo. The pressure on her body, which she could not control, pressed towards Zmo. Just as Zhu Yao was about to make her move, someone was a step faster than her. Another wave of even more powerful pressure pressed back at him. Celestial Indus sect sure is arrogant. Unexpectedly, The one who made his move was actually Sovereign Danwu of Ancient Hill Sect, who did not have much presence. In the past, in public, even if he revealed his face, he would never speak. His low profile caused people to subconsciously ignore him. However, the moment he made his move this time, he clearly let people feel the strength of a late-stage demigod. Even Mu Meiyin's expression changed. Although Celestial Indus Sect was known to have 3 demigods, Qi Han and Mu Meiyin had just entered the demigod realm not long ago. The other sovereign who did not show himself was merely a mid-stage demigod as well. Only then did the Celestial Indus Sect master feel a little afraid. Suddenly, there were 2 more sovereigns in the sect, and he was so happy that his mind was muddled. He had forgotten that the demigod sovereigns of Ancient Hill Sect had all entered the demigod realm for many years. Sovereign Zhu Yao, who had the lowest cultivation, was an early-stage demigod, but she came from Jade Forest Mountain. He had no choice but to bite the bullet and come out to smooth things over, explaining to everyone that his sovereign was just being impulsive and did not have the intention to start a war. However, Sovereign Dan Wu did not reply, and once again closed his eyes to rest, as though he was completely uninterested in all of this. Mu Meiyin felt that she had indeed been a little impulsive as well. She understood the feeling of being humble to the very bottom of the earth all too well. Hence, after becoming strong, she could no longer control the reckless thoughts in the depths of her heart. She did not want to be suppressed by others, hence, she lowered her vigilance. Today, we're here to discuss the matters regarding the intersect tournament that will be held a year from now, Qi Han reminded coldly. Although he was a little annoyed at Rulu's impulsiveness, out of consideration for the other party's cultivation, he endured it. He was becoming more and more unhappy with this daughter of the sect master. In the past, he still felt a little sympathy for her. After all, she had the water spirit vein in the past. However, ever since her spirit vein mutated, it was as though she had become a completely different person. She became calculative, and she even targeted her own disciple at every turn. Sect Master Mu Meiyin regained her composure, and a hint of radiance flashed past her eyes. She smiled. Actually, the intersect tournament is a huge matter for the various sects, and it's related to everyone here. If the matter regarding the venue is difficult, why don't you directly ask everyone, and see which sect everyone is willing to compete in? This move of hers was ruthless enough. The other sects couldn't wait for the 2 sects to fight, so they naturally agreed to join in the fun. And faintly, there were already quite a number of people who were starting to shout out that they wanted to go to Celestial Indus Sect. However, there were also some sects who shouted that they would go to other immortal sects. What was even more ridiculous was that there were some who said that they would take turns. Do you think this is the Olympics? Zhu Yao silently retorted. The various sects had been arguing endlessly. Initially, it was the competition between Celestial Indus Sect and Ancient Hill Sect, and later on, the other sects wanted to share as well. Hence, a large number of sects had once again appeared. All of them were clamoring to go to their own sections. After arguing for a long while, there was still no conclusion. Zhu Yao could not help but suggest to everyone, "Let's go out and fight. Then let's decide the winner in 3 rounds," someone shouted. Wow, they're really going to fight. The final result was out. In the end, it was still the fist that spoke. Each sect would choose 3 representatives and listen to the winner. Zhu Yao was forced to kneel in front of this simple violence after fighting for an entire day. At the end of the day, we still have to fight. Why the hell are you wasting so much time talking? At the same time, he might as well finish the sect tournament. In less than a moment, everyone had already made their initial decision on the candidates. The participants were actually all nascent soul practitioners. However, when it was Celestial Indus Sect's turn to choose their candidates, Mu Meiyin stood up. With a smile that was not a smile, she looked at Zhu Yao, who was seated at the seat of honor. Sovereign Zhu Yao, why don't this sovereign accompany everyone as well? Sovereign Zhu Yao, are you willing to fight with me? What? Zhu Yao was stunned for a moment. Wasn't her main mission today to act as a front? Seeing that she did not have any reaction, Mu Meiyin's smile grew even more complacent. Zhu Yao understood. Although the person she hated the most was Yu Hanxin, ever since she stopped her from seizing Yu Yao's body, She had always been a thorn in Mu Meiyin's heart. She did not expect that she would actually dare to deal with her so openly. When Mu Meiyin's letter of challenge fell, the entire place instantly turned silent. A moment later, they faintly felt a little excited. This was a battle between demigod sovereigns. It was a rare sight. What? Sovereign doesn't dare? I don't dare. Mu Meiyin was startled, as though she did not expect that she would reply in such a manner. For a moment, she did not know how to react. She actually shamelessly admitted it. The demigod has the ability to move mountains and drain the seas. This is my ancient hill sect. Zhu Yao calmly explained, and she even rolled her eyes. Her meaning was, are you stupid to suffer such a huge loss from a single battle? Crowd. That did seem logical. Demigod stage practitioners would never easily take action because their abilities were too strong. If they were to fight, they would not be able to settle the matter. Hence, the gaze they used to look at Mu Meiyin with had changed. For her own selfishness, she would disregard the lives of others. Mu Meiyin was trembling from anger, yet she was unable to refute. She could only fiercely say, we can leave ancient hill sect and fight on the surface of the sea. This way, she wouldn't implicate others, right? Not going. Is there no one by the sea? She rolled her eyes again. If they were to fight on the surface of the sea, huge waves would be stirred up and tsunamis would definitely be triggered. Zhu Yao decided to add fuel to the fire. We were once mortals as well. One should not forget one's roots. Hence, the gazes the crowd used to look at Mu Meiyin with became even more unfriendly, as though she was a great villain who had killed a large number of residents by the sea. Mu Meiyin took a few deep breaths before she could suppress her own anger. She coldly laughed. In the end, aren't you just afraid of fighting me? It's fine. I don't have to fight you no matter what. As long as you admit defeat willingly, it's fine if we don't fight this round. Chapter 128. These words, weren't they a little too arrogant? First, she scolded Zhu Yao for surrendering without a fight, and now, she even wanted to count her as a loser? As expected, the expressions of the people of ancient hill sect turned ugly. The hell, this temper of hers. Initially, she did not want to slap her face so quickly, but since she insisted on coming forward, then, she could only slap her with all her might. Sovereign. Rulu, right? Zhu Yao chuckled. You really want to fight with me that much? Humph, Mu Meiyin coldly snorted. Cut the crap. Are you going to fight or not? Or are you afraid of losing? I don't really care about winning or losing. However, a mere competition of ours has harmed countless lives and implicated countless karma. Don't you think it's a little too much? In this world, the strong are respected. If those mortals want to blame, they can only blame themselves for not being strong enough. But ants are good at living. Who didn't start out as mortals? Ants will always be ants. Even if they manage to steal a life, they will still be so weak that they can be pinched to death. Her eyes turned cold, as though she had recalled something. The more she spoke, the more agitated she became. She understood the feeling of being powerless to resist the most, which was why she pursued strength after her reincarnation. The expressions of the others, however, turned ugly one after another. Though everyone knew what she said was the truth, and was also the current situation of the cultivation world. However, agreeing in his heart and saying it out loud were two different things. After all, they had always considered themselves as righteous immortal sects, and even used lofty terms to disguise themselves. Although there had been people who had casually killed a group of mortals with a wave of their hand, it was impossible for them to say it proudly. After all, they were not evil cultivators. Zhu Yao saw that the preheating was about done. I heard that Sovereign Rulu has only recently stepped into the demigod stage. So what if I am? Mu Meiyin coldly laughed. Could it be that she thought she did not have the ability to fight against her? Nothing much. Zhu Yao continued to smile. I just suddenly recalled something. 100 years ago, when you accompanied Azure Flight's sect master to seek my little disciple's hand in marriage, we met once. Back then, you were still kind-hearted. You even helped Sect Master Su plead for leniency? I wonder if Sovereign still remembers? The matter of Azure Flight Sect's Sect Master being rejected had been spread all these years. As expected, a hint of embarrassment flashed past Wu Song's face. However, everyone did not expect that back then, this person would be present as well. The matter of Rulu being a traitor of Celestial Indus Sect in the past and escaping into Azure Flight Sect was something that everyone was actually aware of. However, she was now a soul formation supremacy. It was just that no one dared to mention it. As expected, Mu Meiyin's expression turned a little ugly, yet it was not good for her to flare up. She coldly snorted and did not speak. Most probably, no one would dare to laugh at her anymore. But such a move. On the contrary, it made everyone feel that she was tacitly agreeing. Zhu Yao, however, let out a long sigh. Time passes so quickly. In the blink of an eye, 100 years have passed. Back then, you were still at the middle stages of nascent soul. At first, these words didn't sound like much, but after thinking about it carefully, there were doubts everywhere. Middle stage nascent soul, 100 years ago? What a joke. What do you mean? As expected, Mu Meiyin had also thought of it and fiercely glared at her. Nothing much. In just 100 years, you managed to advance from the middle stage of the nascent soul realm to the soul formation realm. You are so talented. For a moment, everyone's gazes were fixed on Rulu. How was that possible? No matter how heaven-defying the resources were, advancing from a mid-stage nascent soul to a demigod would require at least a few hundred, or even a few thousand years. They had all cultivated for 1,000 years before reaching the soul formation stage. A mere 100 years? This was illogical. Either the other party had an extremely powerful and heaven-defying cultivation technique, or perhaps he had a heaven-defying magic treasure. The entire hall was in an uproar. Everyone was shocked by this speed. Other than ZMO, who had a calm expression. He silently glanced at his martial uncle. Martial uncle, do you have the cheek to talk about others? Didn't you suddenly become a deity transformation cultivator after disappearing for 200 years? He didn't even say anything. Everyone else thought that Yu Yin had taken in 3 disciples, but fortunately, he was the only one who knew that ancestral grand uncle's disciple was the original one. Only then did Mu Meiyin realize that she seemed to have been too arrogant and attracted the covetous eyes of others. Those pairs of probing and doubtful eyes made her feel a little uneasy. For Sovereign to rise so quickly, you must have had a fortuitous encounter, right? Zhu Yao just had to add fuel to the fire. So what if I did? Mu Meiyin's expression turned even colder as she released her own demigod stage pressure, wanting to shock the crowd who were still discussing. However, Zhu Yao, as though she was going against her, released her pressure as well, pushing her back. Just what are you trying to do? Even if Mu Meiyin was a fool, she knew what Zhu Yao was planning. I'm just doubting if such a fortuitous encounter exists in this world, Zhu Yao said word by word. Just what kind of fortuitous encounter can allow a person's cultivation to instantly rise to the demigod stage? And his personality has even changed greatly, becoming so ruthless and disregarding the lives of others. When these words fell, everyone was dumbfounded. Zhu Yao was just short of directly saying that she had been taken over. Everyone could not help but recall how she insisted on fighting Zhu Yao without any hesitation. Adding her cultivation, they were already starting to believe her words a little in the depths of their hearts. Even her father, the sect master of Celestial Indus Sect, began to ponder as well. You're spouting nonsense. Mu Meiyin instantly panicked. Initially, the matter of her being taken over was true. However, it was not after she became a nascent soul cultivator, but before Relu began to cultivate. Zhu Yao, don't think that I don't dare to kill you. Her expression turned stern, and the demigod stage pressure suddenly increased by several times. Zhu Yao herself was not afraid of this pressure, but the worst thing was, the shadow behind her seemed to have been enraged as well, and it was currently pouncing straight towards her. Zhu Yao's figure turned, and in a flash, she teleported out of the entrance of the Great Hall, arriving at the empty plaza. Sovereign, I was right. Are you trying to silence me by killing me? When she heard these words, as expected, the furious Mu Meiyin chased after her. Zhu Yao smiled. I was afraid you wouldn't come out. She stood at a place not far away from her and looked at her with a cold smile, as though she was looking at a corpse. The shadow behind her grew even denser as well. That low and sinister laughter once again sounded, causing the depths of her heart to turn a little cold. Zhu Yao tightened her grip on the things in her hands. Actually, her legs had long turned soft from anxiety, but she was afraid that she could not solve the problem, so she had no choice but to risk it. She had simply brought forward the matter that she had decided on a long time ago. That shadow had already charged towards her, and Zhu Yao had no choice but to retreat and dodge it. No one else could see the shadow, so everyone could only see Mu Meiyin standing at the same spot without moving, while Zhu Yao was fleeing in a very sorry state. It was as though she was fleeing in panic because of the opponent's aura. Mu Meiyin coldly snorted. She was overestimating herself. Couldn't she see the phantom? Then, she would play with her. Zhu Yao was being chased to the point where she had nowhere to retreat. Initially, she had thought that she would definitely suffer some injuries after encountering this shadow. She had already prepared herself for both sides to suffer heavy injuries. However, she did not know if it was because she was too arrogant, but this shadow seemed to be toying with her the entire time. It simply chased her all over the place and did not actually attack her. It gave off the feeling of a cat playing with a mouse. Zhu Yao could not help but praise his generosity. As expected, brainless children were much happier. However, though it was fun for a cat to play with a mouse, if the one that was caught suddenly turned into a tiger, she wondered what the cat would think. Zhu Yao looked at the huge distance between her and Mu Meiyin. It's about time. Now is the time. The shadow leisurely forced Zhu Yao to the edge, and just as he was about to end her, Zhu Yao suddenly raised an object, and with a raise of her hand, she shone it towards him. Suddenly, a ray of golden light directly passed through his body, and his dense black figure was instantly scattered. However, that golden light directly struck towards Mu Meiyin, who was behind her. That ray of light directly swept past her body. Mu Meiyin simply felt a wave of intense pain, as though something important had been directly separated from her body. The spiritual energy in her body felt as though a hole had been opened up. An extremely fast flow. She screamed out miserably, and her voice was extremely shrill. However, another, even louder scream sounded from behind her. It was as though all of the devils from hell were screaming out at the same time. A deafening sound resounded through the clouds, and even the entire ancient hill sect began to tremble. Behind Mu Meiyin, a large amount of thick smoke was currently rising. In the air, it gathered into the shape of a terrifying skull, and its mouth was currently emitting out that shrill scream earlier. With a painful expression, it distorted in the sky. The sun and moon in the initially clear sky had lost their radiance. All of the strange flowers and plants in ancient hill sect instantly withered. The minds of everyone present were shaken by that scream, and they puked out fresh blood, as though their organs were being torn apart. What is this? Someone cried out. However, no one gave him an answer. Forget about the nascent soul reverends present. Even the demigod stage practitioners had never seen such a terrifying scene before. Just the existence of the black smoke in the air was enough to make people completely unable to resist. Help me. Enduring the intense pain in her chest, she once again raised the light mirror in her hands. Circulating all of the spiritual energy in her body, she attacked towards the constantly screaming skull in the air. Feng Yi and Tan Wu were the first to react. One after another, they summoned their own sword intent and attacked towards the sky. However, other than the ray of light released by Zhu Yao's mirror earlier, the other two's attacks were completely ineffective, as though they were slicing through thin air. That shadow, however, quickly retracted and returned back into Mu Meiyin's body. Mu Meiyin, who was still unconscious on the ground earlier, had a hint of red light flashing past her eyes. She stood up, and a powerful energy covered the skies and earth, assaulted towards the crowd. While the crowd was defending, Mu Meiyin had already disappeared from her original spot. The entire place was deathly silent. None of them had regained their senses from that terrifying scene earlier, and no one spoke. Earlier? Just what was that? The sect master of Celestial Indus sect had a dazed expression. Could it be devil race? Tanwu muttered out 2 words. However, the hearts of everyone present could not help but tremble. However, they could not find any other existences to refute it. In this world, the only race that could cause people to completely lose their will to resist, and could cause all living things to instantly lose their vitality, was the devil race. The entire place became even quieter. No one had thought that there would be a day when the devil race would appear in this world where the god race had already gone extinct. Hanxing has disappeared. Qihan suddenly realized that his disciple who had been following behind him had disappeared along with Mu Meiyin as well. Could it be? He did not dare to continue this line of thought. Chapter 129. With the black figure's tyrannical ruckus, everyone present was instantly dumbfounded, and Zhu Yao was no exception. She almost couldn't hold the weapon in her hand, and her heart was thumping wildly. Only then did he start to feel a lingering fear. In fact, ever since her master came down to the mortal world to look for her, she had a faint guess that the darkness was not simple. Even if he was not an immortal from the upper realm, he was definitely an extremely powerful being. But no matter how hard she racked her brains, she would never have guessed that it was actually the legendary demon race. Zhu Yao instantly felt like crying, and had the urge to throw away her burden and go on strike. Motherfucker, that's the devil race, the legendary race that only existed in ancient times. They fought to the death with the god race, the race that both sides received a bento box. How could mere mortals like them fight with him? They were either tired of living or tired of living. They weren't even on the same level, okay? Could it be that she had accidentally activated the Protoss branch, so a demon bloodline had popped out to make up for it? Damn it, other than having a dragon's body, she didn't have the so-called god race's abilities at all, okay? She hadn't even received the most basic inheritance of the dragon. Otherwise, how could she have remained a soul formation cultivator? Venerable one, what should we do next? Probably because this scene was too shocking, a nascent soul practitioner turned around and looked at Zhu Yao, who was still standing at her original spot. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone who was still immersed in the shock of the appearance of the demon race seemed to have recovered from their shock and looked over in unison. That's right. Earlier, the only one who could deal with the devil was Sovereign Zhu Yao alone. They still had hope. Zhu Yao felt a chill being stared at by the countless pairs of eyes that were waiting to be fed, Apui, filled with hope. Instinctively, she took a step back. If she said she didn't know either, would he be beaten to death? Don't panic, everyone. Zhu Yao took a deep breath, suppressing her shock. I think that devil has yet to fully mature. At the very least, he has yet to completely revive. Otherwise, there would be no need to borrow the body of a Shouja. Moreover, I just forcibly removed him from the host's body. He must have been seriously injured. The only thing we can do now is to get rid of him before he recovers his strength. In short, it's better to take advantage of his illness and kill him. No, it's better to take advantage of the victory and pursue him. Everyone heard this. There was finally a glimmer of hope in his despairing eyes. That's right, they won the battle just now. This matter cannot be delayed. Zhu Yao instructed with a stern expression. We must definitely find them before the devil recovers. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles in the future. Everyone's expression turned serious. In the face of a huge matter of life and death in the cultivation world, the various clans and sects displayed unprecedented unity. One after another, they began to declare that they would send out all of their disciples and carry out a large-scale search operation. Other than Celestial Indus sect and Azure Flight sect, as the main culprit for harboring the demons, although the other party was also a victim, they had completely lost everyone's trust. For a time, these two sects received everyone's hostility. It was supposed to be a show to force the emperor to abdicate. However, because of the appearance of the devil race, It had turned into a battle between races. Initially, Ancient Hill Sect, who was about to be forced to give up the right to host the intersect tournament, was forced to do so. However, he once again stood in the leading position, and it was logical and unbreakable. No one would have thought of such a plot twist. Under Zhu Yao's instructions, the news of the devil's reappearance quickly spread throughout the entire cultivation world. Almost every xiuzha, even evil cultivators, began to search for traces of the devil race on their own. Mu Meiyin's name had already resounded throughout the entire cultivation world. That's right, it wasn't Rulu. It was Mu Meiyin. Back then, when Rulu was expelled from Celestial Indus Sect, she changed her name to Mu Meiyin and escaped into Azure Flight Sect. Hence, everyone thought that Mu Meiyin was the devil's real name. Zhu Yao thought that with so many people searching for her, she would be able to obtain news of Mu Meiyin not long after. She never expected that after an entire 3 months had passed, forget about Mu Meiyin, even Yuhan Xin, who was captured along the way, did not have any news at all. She would rush over at the first instant whenever there was a suspicious piece of news. However, there was not a single one of them. Not even a single strand of the devil's hair could be seen. Mu Meiyin and Yuhan Xin, this love-hate pair, seemed to have evaporated from the world and had disappeared without a trace. Zhu Yao could not help but feel a little anxious as well. Yu Yin sighed. His stupid disciple had already walked back and forth in front of him more than 100 times, and he was about to faint. Yet, his disciple, who was usually like a firecracker, was currently surprisingly silent. He had already appeared for a long time, yet she did not have the slightest bit of reaction. He was unhappy. Master. Zhu Yao seemed to have only just realized the figure that suddenly popped out from the jade pendant. Startled for a moment, she frowned a moment later and continued to walk back and forth. There's something I can't figure out. What is it? Just where did that devil pop out from? How did he appear? And how did Mu Meiyin obtain him? Ever since the first time she met the resurrected Mu Meiyin, that shadow had been by her side. Evidently, that shadow had existed since the very beginning, and it was even possible that Mu Meiyin's resurrection and possession were the handiwork of the devil. Otherwise, when Radish was being possessed back then, why would Mu Meiyin's soul directly appear in Radish's divine sense and not be detected by anyone? And after the possession failed, the black hole she left was very strange as well, and did not seem like any sort of divine art. That devil definitely did not simply have a blood contract with Mu Meiyin. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to help Mu Meiyin with all his might. Devils did not have much humanity to speak of. He must have some sort of goal for doing this, or perhaps he had reached some sort of agreement with Mu Meiyin. Then, could she guess that from the very beginning, Mu Meiyin was not some sort of bug, and the real bug was actually that devil in her body? Perhaps her method from the very beginning was wrong. The one she truly had to guard against was that devil, and not Mu Meiyin. Yu Yin lightly frowned, and a moment later, he said, devils are naturally murderous and have always existed in this world. However, ever since the ancient era, they were completely sealed by the god race. There were no fish that escaped the net? If there were, how could the current cultivation world exist? Master, you're saying? Zhu Yao's eyes shone. That wasn't a true devil. Yu Yin frowned and shook his head. Yes and no. What did he mean? Can we speak in human terms? Did you realize that there was something abnormal about that devil? Yu Yin continued. Abnormal? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Does being abnormally strong count? Yu Yin looked at her with disdain, sighed, and gave her an expression that said as expected, you're stupid. Other than you, if anyone else attacked that devil, what effect would there be? Effect? What effect would there be? The others basically did not hit. Zhu Yao said halfway, and suddenly widened her eyes. He doesn't have a physical body? Yu Yin lightly nodded. His disciple could be considered to be so stupid that there was medicine that could save her. That devil's physical body has already been destroyed? Zhu Yao instantly grew a little excited. Every living being in this world had a soul, and the only thing that could contain a soul was a physical body. No matter if it was a demonic beast, or a human, it was the same. Other than the path of reincarnation, which could temporarily contain a soul. All souls that had lost their physical bodies could not exist in this world for more than 7 days. After 7 days, their souls would completely dissipate. But that devil clearly could leave Mu Meiyan's body. Back then, when she was in Azure Flight sect, that shadow came alone, and Mu Meiyan was not nearby. Furthermore, that devil was clearly here before Mu Meiyan took over his body. Back then, when he had taken over Rulu's body, that devil could have simply come by himself. So why did he have to bring Mu Meiyan along? And they were even like a loving family, coexisting peacefully for so long. This was simply illogical. Even if a devil's soul could reside in anything. Wait a minute, anything? Could it be? That devil did not possess Rulu's body, and instead resided in Mu Meiyan's soul? Yu Yin deeply frowned, and then nodded. There was indeed such a possibility. Zhu Yao instantly felt a little speechless. This devil was a little too unlucky, wasn't he? What could he not find to reside in? He found a soul to reside in. It was no wonder he had to help her take over her body and act as her nanny along the way. This devil, is he sick? Zhu Yao could only understand it this way. Most likely, when his original body was destroyed, he basically did not have the time to find a suitable physical body, so he could only reside in the soul of a human practitioner whose physical body had similarly died. Zhu Yao wiped off her sweat. Why would a soul make things difficult for a soul? That's not right. They were already a loving family. Zhu Yao took out the mirror-like mystic artifact she had refined and muttered. In other words, the one I slashed earlier wasn't a connection through a blood contract. It's not a blood contract, but a soul link between the two of them. Amen. Zhu Yao's face darkened, as she had a bad premonition. In other words, that sword of mine had instead helped him, allowing that devil to enter a new physical body. Of course. The hell. Zhu Yao suddenly had the urge to stomp her hands. This is what you get for having such a cheap hand. However, Yu Yin continued, that sword of yours had injured his soul, and no one can repair the damage to his soul. Even if the devil were to take over his body, he might not succeed. In other words, he temporarily will not be looking for a new physical body? Amen. Who? She was given a fright. He did not even pant when he spoke. Yu Yin looked at the mystic artifact in her hands as well. This was something he could not understand at all. Theoretically speaking, things like souls were intangible, yet his disciple was actually able to sever them. He was a little suspicious as to what exactly his disciple had refined. Zhu Yao's line of sight looked towards the weapon in her hands as well. Honestly speaking, even she was shocked, alright? Back then, she simply wanted to refine the sharpest weapon, and the one in her hands was indeed a genuine 10th rank mystic artifact. However, Zhu Yao pulled the handle of the mirror and turned it, instantly separating the mirror and the handle. The mystic artifact, which was still overflowing with spiritual energy earlier, instantly showed two extremes. The part on the handle, the spiritual energy, was even denser. Earlier, it was just a regular 10th rank mystic artifact, but now, it was emitting the aura of a top-grade mystic artifact. The other half of the mirror, however, instantly dimmed, turning into a regular copper mirror. It could not even be considered as a mystic artifact. However, what truly injured the devil was not the 10th rank top-grade handle, but this regular copper mirror. Just what item did you refine? When his disciple was refining the artifact, Yu Yin had been watching her the entire time. However, he still could not understand. It was clearly a very ordinary item. Zhu Yao smiled. Back then, I simply wanted to refine the sharpest item. Later on, I recalled that item had always been by my side. It's not profound nether metal? That was the most special piece of material he had left for his disciple. If it was refined properly, there was a possibility that it could be refined into a divine artifact. Zhu Yao shook her head, pointed to the sky, and said, "It's light." Right now, I have nothing to do with Azure Flight. What's there to talk about going back? Seeing that she didn't have the slightest intention of letting go, Wu Song got a little anxious. As long as the Venerable One returns, this disciple is willing to give up the position of sect master. Give? This time, Zhu Yao really laughed. Wu Song, do you think I want it? Wu Song's face instantly paled, as though he did not expect that she would reply in such a manner. After a long while, he finally found the words to mutter. Sovereign, Azure Flight was founded by you. Everyone has always respected you. Do you really have the heart to see it destroyed? Of course. Zhu Yao nodded without the slightest hesitation. Wu Song was instantly stunned. Zhu Yao stood up and walked over. Her heart was suddenly filled with anger for no reason. Even Sect Master Su could bear to chase my only disciple out of Azure Flight and watch him fall into the hands of evil practitioners. Why would I not bear to do so? Heretic practitioner? Wu Song was stunned, as he looked towards Yu Luo at the side with an astonished expression. What evil cultivator? Could it be that Sect Master Su doesn't know that there have always been heretic practitioners lingering around Azure Flight sect? Or, even though you knew about it, you still chased Yu Luo out of Azure Flight? Even clay figurines had their own temper, let alone her. Back then, when she passed Radish to him, how did he guarantee it? But in the end, if she had not sensed that cave back then, if she had come out from that scroll a little later, most likely, recalling the scene back then, she even had the urge to beat him up until his mother couldn't recognize him. No, I didn't, Wu Song anxiously explained. Back then, when he told Yu Luo that the person he liked was Yin-er, it was not that he did not expect her to be sad. However, he never expected that she would return to Ancient Hill Sect by herself. Could it be that she had encountered a heretic practitioner back then? This matter, I really don't know. Then don't you know that Yu Luo has a single water spirit vein? Wu Song instantly turned silent. What did a single water spirit vein mean? Was he stupid? Or was there grass growing in his brain to actually let her be alone? Back then, the reason why she allowed Yu Luo to go to Azure Flight was so that when she wasn't around, there would be someone to protect her. However, she never expected that the absolutely safe place she thought of was actually the place that hurt her the most. Wu Song lowered his head. His heart was already about to be drowned by guilt. He did not even have the courage to raise his head to look at her. However, when he thought of Azure Flight's current situation, he had no choice but to continue pleading. This matter is still my fault alone. However, Sovereign, please do not anger the other disciples. Currently, Azure Flight is being ostracized by the other sects, and they are often harassed by heretic practitioners with ill intentions. Adding that the Great Mountain Barrier Formation has been removed, the disciples in the sect have lost their protection and are often injured. The people in the sect are all homeless. I hope that Sovereign can help them out on account of our past relationship. Zhu Yao took a deep breath and looked at Yu Luo at the side. Little Radish, what do you think? She was the one who brought them here, and the one who was hurt the most in this matter was also her. She did not know what Radish was thinking either. As the saying goes, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. She did not wish for Yu Luo to fall into it again. If she still could not forget Wu Song, then she had nothing to say as well. Yu Luo was silent for a moment. When she raised her head, her expression was unexpectedly clear as well. Master, Yu Luo can report this matter to the Ancient Hill Sect Master. If Sect Master Su is willing, he can bring his disciples to join our Ancient Hill Sect. What? Wu Song was a little dumbfounded, as though he never expected that Yu Luo would bring up such a suggestion. Joining Ancient Hill Sect, that meant that there would no longer be an Azure Flight sect in this world. How was this any different from annihilating his sect? Zhu Yao could not help but want to laugh, and the depths of her heart instantly relaxed. It seemed like Yu Luo really did not have the slightest bit of thoughts towards Wu Song. This move was ruthless enough. Without crippling a single soldier, she had taken in so many elite disciples for nothing. As expected of that old man Zemo's daughter, she was as cunning as could be. Yu Luo, do you really want Azure Flight sect to be annihilated? Wu Song seemed as though he wanted to plead for leniency, but he was interrupted by Yu Luo. Sectmaster Su, both you and I know that this is the best method. Currently, amongst the various sects, other than our ancient hill sect, who else would dare to accept disciples from your esteemed sect? Wu Song was at a loss for words. Indeed, because of Mu Meiyin, the various sects were currently avoiding Azure Flight in fear. How could they accept disciples from the sect? They were afraid that another demon would sneak in. And only ancient hill sect, who had exposed the conspiracy of the devil, had this kind of strength. Wu Song's face was filled with helplessness, and he did not directly reply to Yu Luo's suggestion. However, they knew that he would agree to it sooner or later. Azure Flight Sect's foundation was shallow in the first place. When she first established the sect, she had mentioned it before, to have them keep a low profile as much as possible. Yet, not only did they steal the limelight before they even had a stable footing, they even openly invited Mu Meiyin into their sect, and admitted that their previous self was Azure Melancholy Sect. No matter what was the reason why Azure Melancholy Sect was annihilated back then, now that they realized that there were so many sins left behind, how could those heretic practitioners let them go? Let alone now that they were in such a weak state. Sesame. She suddenly recalled something. Mistress, you called me? Sesame's despicable voice sounded. Mistress, do you miss Beastie? Zhu Yao glared at Sesame, whose head was peeking out from behind the tree. Why are you standing so far away for? Hee. Sesame laughed. Of course, it was because he was afraid of being beaten. When Wu Song came, he knew that his mistress would definitely know what he had done. Hence, it was safer to hide far away. Amen. He was a smart beastie. Let me ask you, were you the one who removed the Great Mountain Barrier Formation? Sesame scratched the tree trunk in front of him and said with an innocent look, Beastie simply wanted to help Little Radish vent his anger. Then what about Chun Ning? This really has nothing to do with me. He was the one who wanted to leave. I didn't even get to see his face. Although he was chased by him, didn't he manage to shake him off? Amen. He was definitely a smart beastie. Zhu Yao's face darkened. It was no wonder Wu Song was in such a hurry to seek help. The front door was wide open, and the backyard was on fire. It would be weird if Azure Flight could hold on. Although she was a little annoyed at Sesame for acting on his own, he was the one who found it himself. They were the ones who invited Mu Meiyin in. Forget it. Help me find Chun Ning. Mistress. Sesame's voice instantly sank to the bottom of the valley, and he looked pitiful as though he had been abandoned. Hurry and go. Zhu Yao could not be bothered with it, seeing that it did not move even after being urged several times. If you're not going, I'll go. Beastie will go now. Beastie will go now. And with a swoosh, his figure disappeared. What a joke. How could he let another demonic beast be alone with his mistress? He was the genuine contracted beastie. Sesame's movements were very quick, and it was also because Chen Ning had been lingering in the vicinity of Ancient Hill Sect. However, because of Ancient Hill Sect's Great Mountain Barrier Formation, he was unable to enter. Not even a moment later, Chun Ning was brought into Jade Forest Mountain. Mistress. Chun Ning called out and stared straight at Zhu Yao. He was still dressed in that elegant white robe, as he cupped his fists and gave a proper bow. This subordinate greets mistress. From the looks of it, he was much more well-behaved than the lowly Sesame. However, his eyes were a little scorching, as though they were about to burn. Mama's egg, why the hell are you drooling? Coo. Zhu Yao coughed a few times. Anyone would feel uncomfortable being stared at by this perverted man, right? She simply could not understand just how powerful the suppression of the dragon bloodline was. Chun Ning, there's something I wish to ask for your help with. This subordinate is willing to die 1,000 deaths. Chun Ning immediately expressed his loyalty. It's not that serious. Zhu Yao suddenly felt a little of a headache. I simply wish for you to hurry and produce a batch of mystic tools for me as soon as possible. Zhu Yao's thoughts were very simple. If the weakness of the devil was light, then wouldn't it be fine if she produced a few more lightsabers? This way, even if that shadow were to appear again, she would not have to fight alone. However, with just her alone, she definitely wouldn't be able to complete it. Chen Ning was a merchant, so he definitely had a bunch of craftsmen under him. Finding him to do it was the most suitable, and, as a merchant, she believed that he had his own secret techniques as well. This way, she could prevent these techniques that did not belong to this world from leaking out. Of course, he wasn't doing it for free either. After getting rid of the bug that was the devil, he could take back these weapons. In the future, he could do whatever he wanted with them. Chun Ning was a reliable person. In just a few days' time, he had already produced a batch. Although their might was a little weaker than the ones in her hands, it was still not bad. She then distributed these swords to the various sects. As expected, the efficiency of searching for the devil had increased by quite a bit. At the very least, there were very few false news that came. A month later, something unexpected suddenly happened. P.S. I've just recovered from my flu. Recently, my waist and back are aching, and my legs are cramping. I can't update twice. With the author's terrible hand speed, it would already be considered pretty good if he could type 1,000 words in an hour. In other words, one update would require 3 hours of coding. As for the previous month's update, cough. In the end, it was all eaten up by the transvestite during a trip to Thailand. I still have to go to work normally, so I hope everyone can understand. Hence, recently, I've been updating alone. Chapter 131. Recently, Yu Luo had been very busy, and she rarely returned to the Jade Forest Mountain. She had been handling some trivial matters of the sect in the main mountain. ZMO was already in closed-door seclusion, and he did not have much lifespan left. If he did not make a breakthrough into a demigod this time, he would most likely fall as a nascent soul cultivator. Most of the matters regarding Ancient Hill Sect had already been handed over to the various mountain lords and Yu Luo. Only Zhu Yao and Yu Ying were left in Jade Forest Mountain. Zhu Yao was busy looking for Mu Mei Yin and would often head out as well. Only Yu Ying remained in Jade Forest Mountain. Yu Ying was a child with an extremely low presence, adding that he did not speak often. If not for the fact that he liked to follow by her side occasionally, Zhu Yao would have subconsciously ignored him. He was very serious in his cultivation. This could be seen from the fact that he was able to form his gold core so quickly even though he had 5 spiritual roots. Zhu Yao could not help but feel a little guilty towards him. Back then, she made the decision to bring him out on her own. However, after so many years, he was basically left to fend for himself. Even the matters regarding cultivation were taught by Yu Luo, and she basically had never interfered. Turning her head, she looked at Yu Ying, who was staring at her with a wooden expression. His eyes were clear, and other than her figure, there was nothing else, let alone resentment. It seemed that just looking at her like this was enough. Zhu Yao felt that she had neglected her duties even more. Taking advantage of the rare free time today, she wanted to give him some pointers on his cultivation. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly felt the ground shake. A pillar of light suddenly appeared on the surface of the calm sea, shooting straight into the clouds. Auspicious signs appeared everywhere, 7-colored auspicious light scattered down, and the sky was filled with 7-colored auspicious clouds. Hundreds of flowers bloomed in Ancient Hill Sect, and in an instant, the fragrance of flowers filled the air. What the hell is this? A unique treasure has appeared in the sea. Feng Yi flew over with her sword, and indicated for her to follow, before flying towards the pillar of light. Zhu Yao could faintly sense that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Obediently wait here for my return. After instructing Yu Ying, he also chased after them on his sword. In less than a moment, he had already flown close to the pillar of light. They were not the first to arrive. There were already a few people surrounding them. However, they were all demigod sovereigns from other sects, and Chi Han was there as well. They had probably sensed the commotion here and rushed over. The pillar of light was enormous. The diameter of the cloud was about 10 meters, and it seemed to be made up of spiritual energy. Someone shouted out, and suddenly, a gigantic icicle struck towards the white door. However, the moment it struck the door, it suddenly disappeared, as though it was swallowed by something. Before the crowd could even react, A ripple of light flashed on the door, and the icicle that had suddenly disappeared once again flew out. This time, it struck towards the direction where the icicle was shot out from earlier. A nascent soul practitioner was unable to dodge in time and was struck head-on. If he had not erected a barrier in time, he would have been penetrated by the icicle. This door can reflect mystic arts. Everyone was stunned. They began to send out a few probing attacks, but without exception, they were all reflected back to where they came from. Even a demigod sovereign had made his move, yet the door still did not show any signs of opening. Strange, there clearly aren't any ripples from a formation. Why? The people present could not help but scratch their hearts. Clearly, the treasure was right in front of them, yet they could not find the key to open the door. There seems to be some characters on the door, someone reminded, and only then did the crowd's attack stop. One after another, they moved forward to take a look, yet they were all confused. Many grids faintly appeared on the door, and a few random grids had a few characters written on them. And those characters were all simple numbers. Zhu Yao's face instantly stiffened, as she instantly felt the evil intentions of the entire world. This is. Though, Zidan at the side had a shocked expression, and even Fengyi widened her eyes. Fellow Taoist Zidan, do you recognize what this is? Someone excitedly asked. This is an ancient mechanism formation. Zidan exposed the truth in a single sentence. Zhu Yao's expression darkened even more. That's right, an ancient mechanism formation. Diagram of 9 palaces, right? Do you dare to take a look at it? Fellow Taoist, you recognize this formation. That person continued to excitedly say. Then, is it possible to dispel it? Zidan shook his head and deeply sighed. As though he had recalled a sad past, his entire being sank a little. Fellow Taoist Zidan, you really don't know how to dispel it? That person thought that he was unwilling and still persistently persuaded. This matter is of great importance. That devil might very well be hiding inside. It's not that I'm unwilling, but I simply don't have the strength to do so, Zidan said. This ancient mechanism formation technique is extremely complicated and has long been lost. I have only seen Junior Marshal Brother Jiang dispel it. Junior Marshal Brother Jiang Zhu Yao. Complicated your sister. Her emotions were very complicated. I wonder where fellow Taoist's Junior Marshal Brother surnamed Jiang is? Is it possible to call him out for a meeting? The sorrowful aura on Zidan's body grew even more obvious. A moment later, he choked a little and said, that Junior Marshal Brother of mine had already fallen 1,000 years ago. That person sank into silence, and a moment later, he let out a deep sigh. Even Fengyi at the side seemed to have recalled a sad past, as her face was filled with confusion. A moment later, she muttered to herself, Jiangzhu. Zhu Yao simply felt her legs buckling, and she had almost fallen into the sea. Version 3.0 was definitely her dark history. Could it be that there's really no one who can dispel this formation? In an instant, the entire place quietened down, revealing a helpless look. Zhu Yao weakly raised her hand. Why don't I give it a try? In an instant, dozens of gazes instantly gathered onto her body. Even Fengyi and Zidan's eyes instantly shone. You know how to dispel this? Fengyi suddenly took a step forward and looked straight at her. Various emotions were flashing in her eyes, as though something was about to be ignited. My master had once taught me. Zhu Yao gave out an all-purpose excuse. As expected, the light in Fengyi's eyes instantly extinguished. However, the others revealed looks of understanding one after another. Sovereign Yu Yin was someone who had already ascended. He had lived for several tens of thousands of years, and his strength was unfathomable. Furthermore, he was proficient in formations, so it was very normal for him to know ancient mechanisms like these. The crowd that was still squeezing together earlier immediately opened up a path as they excitedly watched Zhu Yao dispel the formation. Over 100 nascent soul and demigod practitioners were staring at her as she played with the 9-palace diagram. This scene was too beautiful, and they did not dare to look at it. Zhu Yao awkwardly walked over and began to add and subtract numbers within 10 digits. Right now, she deeply regretted not teaching this 9-palace diagram to Feng Yi in time back then. This basically wasn't anything difficult, yet she was being stared at with such worshipful eyes. She felt a mountain of pressure, you know? This 9-palace diagram was no different from the one she had dispelled in the past, just that it was a little more complicated. However, no matter how complicated it was merely a matter of half an hour. Zhu Yao looked a little hesitantly at the final grid. For a moment, she was a little uncertain if she should open this door. The appearance of this divine residence was indeed very strange. In the vicinity of this sea region, other than ancient hill sect, there were several other deity sects as well. If a divine residence was hidden here, logically speaking, after so many years, someone should have discovered it. Why did it not appear for so long and suddenly appear now? Was that devil really hiding inside? The devil race was a product of the ancient era as well, so it was very normal for them to know this 9-palace diagram. However, with the methods of the devil race, since they had already laid down the 9-palace diagram to prevent others from entering, why did they still allow the divine residence to appear? Wasn't this just looking for a beating? Sovereign. Seeing that she had suddenly stopped moving, someone at the side anxiously reminded. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. Forget it. I'll deal with it when it comes. If I don't go in and take a look, I won't know the result either. Hence, she cast an art and wrote down the formation runes on the final grid. Zhu Yao immediately retreated a few steps, only to see the entire white door suddenly emit out a red glow. The door that was still snow-white earlier, in a moment, was already completely covered by the red glow. In the middle of the tightly shut door, a different kind of green light appeared, and then it slowly opened. The door opened wider, and not even a moment later, it had opened to the point where it could allow a person to enter. Suddenly, a ray of black light fiercely rose from the surface of the sea and surged straight into the door. It carried a familiar, mournful howl that sounded like millions of malicious spirits. For a moment, everyone was caught off guard, and their minds trembled, puking out fresh blood. The sky instantly darkened. Devil. There were even quite a few whose nascent souls were almost shaken out. Chapter 132. Rulu. Chi Han was the first to recognize the red figure that suddenly appeared beside the door. Her entire body was surrounded by devilish aura, as though her entire person was hidden within a black miasma. Her initially weak face became sinister and sinister. As expected, one's appearance was born from one's heart. In just a few short months, her cultivation had already risen from the early stages of demigod to the demigod paragon. No, it was even faintly showing signs of going even higher. Val Spawn, where's Hanqing? Where did you bring Hanqing to? Chi Han questioned with a furious look. Hanqing? Mu Meiyin glanced at him, and a monstrous rage exploded out. Even the devilish aura around her body had begun to churn. Suddenly, she coldly laughed and lightly waved her hand. A lump of black miasma appeared next to her, and a human figure could be faintly seen within. The black miasma faded, and a woman whose entire body was covered in blood was frozen in midair. She seemed to have turned into a bloody person. Her entire body was dyed red, and there were even strange runes engraved on her arms. Zhu Yao had seen those runes before as well. They were exactly the same as the ones Xiaoyi used to lock her soul. This scene was unexpectedly familiar, so familiar that she felt as though something was about to come out. Her chest felt heavy, and for a moment, she was a little unable to breathe. Release her. Seeing his beloved disciple being tortured to such a state, Chi Han's eyes instantly turned crimson. He immediately summoned his sword intent and attacked Mu Meiyin. Mu Meiyin coldly laughed. With a wave of her hand, a violent gust of wind blew, and Chi Han's demigod-level sword intent was instantly dispersed by her. Dozens of wind blades flew towards Chi Han. Chi Han was unable to dodge in time and was struck head-on by that wind blade. Instantly, blood began to flow out from his body like a fountain. I haven't had enough fun yet? How can I release her? Mu Meiyin smiled even more complacently, and her fingers moved. Hundreds of tiny lightning bolts struck onto Yu Hanqing's body. Yu Hanqing, who was on the brink of death earlier, instantly let out a painful scream. The more miserable she screamed, the happier Mu Meiyin became, and her eyes were filled with resentment. What you have given me, I will make you repay it 1,000 times over. No one can escape. Hanqing. Qi Han's face was filled with worry. He struggled to stand up, yet he was powerless. Seeing that Mu Meiyin was about to make her move again, taking this opportunity, Zhu Yao activated the strengthened lightsaber in her hands and struck towards Mu Meiyin. Mu Meiyin was already prepared. With a flicker of his body, he dodged the attack. Humph, you overestimate yourselves. Even if you launch a sneak attack, you won't be able to defeat me. Who said I was going to ambush you? Zhu Yao rolled her eyes. Don't think too highly of yourself. Mu Meiyin was startled for a moment, and only then did she regain her senses. Turning her head around, she saw that the black-colored devilish miasma that was binding Yu Hanqing had already been split apart. Yu Hanqing, who was covered in blood, was caught by Feng Yi, who had long been waiting below. Her original target was not Mu Meiyin. She only wanted to save Mu Meiyin. You deserve to die. Mu Meiyin was infuriated, her expression becoming even more sinister. In an instant, he released all his might. As soon as the pressure of the ascension stage appeared, everyone present was a little unstable. Many Yuanying Xiuzha almost fell off their swords. This was the absolute suppression of cultivation levels. No one could resist it, except for Zhu Yao. Why are you fine? Mu Meiyin glared at Zhu Yao, who looked as though nothing had happened. She did not know either. Ever since she entered the demigod stage, she had never been suppressed by the pressure of others. Those with higher cultivation levels than her would not easily provoke her. Those with lower cultivation levels were even less likely to suppress her, so she had never realized it. Other people's pressure was ineffective against her. Could it be because of the Dragon Race version 4.0? Wrong version? Incompatible? After a moment of shock, Mu Meiyin immediately reacted. Summoning her own divine sword, she charged over. Zhu Yao pulled out the handle of the mirror, circulated her spiritual energy, and instantly turned it into a sword filled with lightning sparks. The strange thing was, Mu Meiyin was not as strong as she had imagined. Initially, she had thought that she definitely had no chance of winning against her, who was a demigod paragon. However, the longer she fought, the more flaws she discovered. There were a few times when her spiritual sword was about to land on her body, but every single time, it would be blocked by the black-colored devilish miasma around her body. And then, it would be reflected back with 10 times the force. When she used her laser to break the devilish miasma, it would be blocked by Mu Meiyin's 5 elemental mystic arts. Zhu Yao felt that something was amiss. Not only was there something amiss with Mu Meiyin, even the devilish miasma around her body was amiss. It did not seem to be as solid as the shadow from before. Just what was wrong? Zhu Yao once again circulated her spiritual sword and attacked. However, for the nth time, it was wrapped by the devilish miasma and was reflected back with an even greater force. Zhu Yao dodged Mu Meiyin's next black wind blade, retreated 10 feet away, and stared at her face, which had long become twisted. Face? The hell? She suddenly understood what was amiss. Her face was too clean, and she could actually see every single detail on her face. And the word bug, which should have been written on her face, had disappeared. She was currently not that bug. In other words, that devil was not on her body. Zhu Yao instantly understood something, and turned to look at the door of the divine residence, which had already been opened. The final ray of black light that rose from the bottom of the sea had already disappeared into the door. You finally noticed. Mu Meiyin coldly laughed. But it's already too late. Phantom has already obtained that deity's corpse. He's about to revive, and all of you will die. The hell? So this woman was here to stall for time. The corpse of a deity from the higher realm was actually placed in this divine residence. Her master had said that the devil was heavily injured and basically could not carry out another body possession. However, if there was no need for a body possession, there was no need to talk about a ready-made physical body. A normal physical body would only be able to leave the body after the physical body died, so it could only be possessed. However, it was different for a deity. A deity's body would not rot, and even if the original owner had already died, it could still bear another soul. Just which unlucky deity was it? If he died, then he died. Why did he have to leave a body behind? Forget about leaving a body behind. You even threw it down to the lower realm. Just what kind of grudge does this world have with you? When Mu Meiyin saw that her scheme had succeeded, she began to laugh out wildly. A green light suddenly shone out from within the white door, and the snow-white door began to shatter inch by inch. Suddenly, a ray of green light flew out from within, and the door finally shattered, falling into the sea. A man dressed in a white robe appeared in the air. He sat within the green light, and there were still remnants of black light in his surroundings that were currently drilling into the man's body. That was the true body of the devil. Ha 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 ha. As though she had finally obtained her wish, Mu Meiyin laughed especially arrogantly. Phantom has already succeeded. None of you should even think of escaping. You idiot. Zhu Yao could not help but scold Mu Meiyin, who was still unable to see the situation. We can't escape. Do you think he will let you go? His next step will be to deal with you. What nonsense are you spouting? Mu Meiyin ruthlessly glared at her. How could Phantom possibly? Before she could even finish, the devilic energy around her body suddenly began to stir, and it had even left her side and flew towards the man within the green light. My cultivation. As the devilic energy left, Mu Meiyin's cultivation began to fall at a speed visible to the naked eye. From a demigod paragon to a late-stage demigod, and even began to fall to a nascent soul. No. Impossible. Why is it like this? Mu Meiyin frantically looked at her own hands, wanting to hold onto the black devilic energy. However, she could only grab onto empty air, and her face was filled with immense fear. No. Impossible. Phantom promised to help me take revenge, help me raise my cultivation, and become a strong practitioner. He's a devil. Zhu Yao coldly laughed. There was actually someone who believed that a devil would keep his word. Her cultivation came from a devil, and now that she had found a better body, she naturally would not waste even a single strand of devilic energy on her body. Naturally, she would not waste even a single strand of devilic energy on her body. Mu Meiyin was still trying to hold onto her own cultivation with all her might. However, she could not stop her cultivation from continuously falling from nascent soul to Azoth core. In the end, it finally stopped at foundation. This should be her own cultivation. However, her face had also quickly turned from a young girl's face into a white-haired old woman. As a foundation disciple, her lifespan was indeed too long. At this moment, the crowd who were suppressed by the pressure had recovered as well. However, none of them moved. The Mu Meiyin in front of them was no longer worth their efforts. The true threat was the one in the sky who had successfully obtained a new body, the devil that was currently fusing together. We can't let him revive, Fengyi solemnly said, and was the first to rush over. However, before she could even approach, she was forced back by that green light. The green light faintly revealed the pressure of a deity from the higher realm. Practitioners from the lower realm like them were basically unable to approach it. Seeing that the devilic energy in the surroundings was about to be completely absorbed by him, the crowd could only watch helplessly. This was a scheme from the very beginning. That so-called divine residence had most likely been obtained by that devil a long time ago, and he knew what was inside as well. He simply did not have a way to enter, which was why he let it out, and made it look like the birth of a unique treasure. He wanted someone to undo that seal, so that the devil called Phantom could enter and obtain that divine body. Yet, he really knew how to undo that seal. Zhu Yao even had the urge to chop off her hands. Damn her hands. Everyone's faces could not help but carry a hint of defeat. Could it be that there was really no way to salvage the situation? Suddenly, a ray of heavenly light pierced through the sky, and a buzzing sound resounded. The sky that was enveloped by dark clouds earlier suddenly dissipated completely. As though the door to the heavens had been opened in an instant, the sky was suddenly filled with falling petals. Two black figures slowly walked out from the heavenly light. These are deities from the higher realm? The crowd instantly felt a little ecstatic. In the next moment, a pressure that belonged to a superior instantly enveloped the entire surface of the sea. That was a level suppression that was 100 times stronger than Mu Meiyan's earlier. The dantian of the nascent soul practitioners present instantly shattered. Their cultivation was destroyed, and they fell into the sea. Even the few demigod practitioners could not withstand it, except for Zhu Yao. Just like how she could not feel Mu Meiyan's pressure back then, she did not feel the slightest bit from these two people either. Oh, there's actually someone who can withstand the spiritual pressure of a gold deity. A doubtful male voice sounded. Zhu Yao was unable to clearly see the appearance of the person within the heavenly light, but she could tell that it was the man on the left who spoke. These two people were really from the higher realm? They sure are good seedlings. Unfortunately, they no longer have the chance to enter the higher realm. Zhu Yao expanded the barrier, trying her best to protect as many people as possible, so as to reduce the pressure from the other party. However, the crowd's pain still did not reduce by much. The hell? Weren't these two people here to help them deal with the devil? Why the hell did they suddenly attack them? Let's get down to business. The other deity spoke up. His voice was even colder. He suddenly reached out his hand towards the green ball next to him, and a flash of light flew out, transforming into the shape of a cage, enveloping the green ball. In an instant, the speed at which it absorbed divinic energy slowed down. The deity who spoke up first, however, looked towards the crowd, and his gaze landed on Yuhan Xin, who was being carried by Qi Han. Is it that one? It should be. She's the only one with an imprint. The other person replied. That deity waved his hand again, and Qi Han simply felt that his hands were empty. In the next moment, Yuhan Xin had already arrived in front of the two people. How did she end up like this? The deity on the left frowned. She has reincarnated several times in the lower realm, so naturally, she's like this. The other person sighed. This has nothing to do with us. We simply have to bring her back and hand her over to His Highness. Chapter 133. You two. Just who are you? Zidan looked at the two people who acted as though there was no one else around, and asked. The deity lightly glanced at her, and Zidan immediately felt the pressure on her body becoming heavier. Humph. That person snorted coldly and looked at the crowd disdainfully. What's the point of telling you ants? Were the two divine monarchs sent by His Highness Qi? Qi Han suddenly stood out from the crowd and bowed towards the two of them. Only then did the immortal on the left turn his gaze over. He narrowed his eyes and said after a while, You're from the Yu family? Qi Han was stunned for a moment, and only after a while did he say, This humble one isn't a member of the Yu family. It's just that the Yu family had met with a calamity, and before the Yu family's patriarch died, he handed Hanqing over to me. All these years, in the name of master and disciple, I've been protecting the Yu clan. Master and disciple? Are you even worthy? The celestial's face turned cold. Qi Han hurriedly explained. It's just a title. This humble one naturally doesn't dare to become Concubine Moon's master. Only then did that person's expression become a little better. After sizing Qi Han up for a moment, he suddenly smiled meaningfully. You sure are smart. That's enough. Since you have protected your master, we will bring you to the upper realm and report to His Highness. In an instant, a look of wild joy flashed past Qi Han's face, and he hurriedly thanked him. That person raised his hand, and the pressure on Qi Han's body completely disappeared. Riding on his sword, he flew behind the two of them and stood there obediently. Towards this scene, everyone was shocked. They never would have thought that Yuhan Xin of the Celestial Indus sect was actually someone from the higher realm, though Zhu Yao had faintly guessed it. In that dream back then, Yuhan Xin was indeed the reincarnation of a female deity. However, She did not expect that she was actually the concubine of His Highness Qi from the upper realm. It was no wonder that in Mu Meiyan's previous life, she had an ambiguous relationship with so many men. In the end, he did not choose any of them and ascended instead. It turned out that he already had an owner. Yet, Qi Han seemed to have long known about this. It was no wonder he treated Yu Hanxin so differently back then. Since we've already found him, then, the immortal on the left turned his head, coldly sweeping his gaze across the crowd. He smiled and said, "It's time to start purifying this world." "What do you mean?" Everyone's faces paled. The man took out a violet gold magic talisman. "Devils cannot be revived. The three realms would be destroyed. We were ordered to come and help this world be purified and reborn." Everyone was dumbfounded by his words. Purify the world and be reborn. Does the immortal monarch mean to kill all living things in this world? Although they had guessed that these two people had come with ill intentions, no one would have thought that their purpose of coming down was actually not to exterminate the devil race. Instead, he wanted to destroy the world. Then what should we do? What about the people in this world? Why? Why do we have to die just to seal the devil race? Yeah, what did we do wrong? They want to kill us as well. Aren't you immortals from the upper realm? Aren't you here to save us? Shut up. That person's eyes turned cold, and an even greater pressure came crashing down. Those who had just opened their mouths to argue were instantly suppressed to the point of vomiting blood, and their cultivation levels regressed. Saving you? What a joke. Why should we save you? Were the devil race released by you personally? You brought this upon yourselves. He said this with great confidence. A bone-piercing chill rose from the depths of their hearts. Just a moment ago, they had thought that they had seen hope, but at this moment, they had once again fallen into an even deeper despair. That deity's expression turned even colder, as though to him, destroying a world was as simple as flipping the pages of a book. This is to prevent the devil race from reappearing in this world, for the greater good of all living beings in the three realms. You can only blame yourselves for being unlucky. In the 3,000 worlds, the devil race just had to choose this world of yours to reappear. Only you guys were implicated. This world was destroyed. This reason was simply unbelievable. Who would have thought that the so-called deities were deities who stood high above them, deities whom they could only look up to? They were actually Asuras who stole lives. In an instant, everyone was incomparably furious. You guys should be glad that you died under the supreme treasure of Lightning Divine Hall, the World Purification Sacred Talisman. That deity threw the purple gold talisman in his hand into the sky, and in an instant, a purple radiance began to fill the entire sky. Dying to prevent the devil race from reappearing in this world can be considered a worthy death. Deity, you sure are scheming. This time, Zhu Yao was truly furious. This old lady had risked her life to fix bugs and patch loopholes, all in order to save this world. Where did these two idiots pop out from? With a single sentence, they erased all of her hard work. Based on what? May I ask if the existence of this world is up to the higher realm to make decisions? The world's fate and reincarnation cycle, and it still belongs to the heavenly Tao. Since when did the divine realm possess the ability to surpass the heavenly Tao? If you want to destroy it, then it's destroyed. Have you ever asked for my master's permission? Little brat, what do you know? That deity frowned. Humph. If not for you foolish mortals awakening this devil, how could this calamity have occurred? Us? Zhu Yao asked in return. May I ask, deity, was this devil truly awakened by someone from the lower realm? That person's expression changed as he glared at her. What do you know? Zhu Yao coldly smiled. The devil race was sealed by the god race in the ancient era. That devil sealing ground is located far away in the abyss of the devil realm. Mere practitioners from the lower realm, no matter how strong they are, do not have the ability to cross realms. May I ask, deity, how did this devil break free from its seal, and how did it come to this lower realm? This, how would I know? A hint of panic flashed past that person's face. Zhu Yao, however, continued. Deity, Even if you don't know, I'm afraid that concubine moon in your hands would know everything, right? Impudent, that person loudly shouted, as an even stronger pressure pressed towards Zhu Yao. Unfortunately, she was immune to it, and her figure did not even budge an inch. How is this possible? This pressure was released with his full strength, yet she was actually not affected in the slightest. Deity, why are you in such a hurry? Let me make another guess. Zhu Yao continued, most likely, this noble concubine moon of yours released something she shouldn't have, which was why she was punished by the higher realm, and was sent to the lower realm, and the devil that was awakened by her had escaped to the lower realm as well. Back then, in that precognitive dream, other than saying that Yuan Xin was a deity, it also mentioned that she had once sealed a heavenly devil in her past life. She had always been unable to understand why that devil was called a heavenly devil. However, after seeing these two people from the higher realm today, she finally understood. The so-called heavenly devil, wasn't it a devil that descended from the heavens? She basically did not seal a heavenly devil, but rather released a devil. Deity, your logic sure is well learned. So be it if the higher realm silently released a devil into the lower realm. They even used this as an excuse to destroy the world. They even said that we died a worthy death. Could this be the style of deities from the higher realm? You, with the truth exposed, that so-called deity could no longer maintain that high and mighty calmness on his face. He fiercely glared at Zhu Yao, and that savage look of his did not even look half like a deity anymore. So what if I am? Though, the other deity who had been silent the entire time spoke up. He looked over with a cold gaze. You're merely ants, yet you still wish to fight against the heavens. Even if the devil came from the higher realm, what can you ants do when we destroy the world today? Ho! Zhu Yao laughed out of anger. We're ants. We're ants, yet you people are not even comparable to ants. Don't use the lives of the three realms as an excuse. People like you who view lives as worthless, selfish, and don't have the slightest bit of mercy in your hearts. You clearly made a mistake, yet you don't know how to repent. You even implicated the entire lower realm. So what's the difference between you and the devil? You people are basically not worthy of being deities. When these words fell, it received the same influence from the crowd, as they began to curse out one after another. Impudent. That person frowned. Seeing that the situation was a little out of control, he coldly said, a mere demigod stage practitioner dares to spout such arrogant words. Whether we're deities or not is not something you people can judge. You can only blame yourselves for being too weak. You basically don't have the qualifications to resist. If the people of the higher realm are all selfish people like you people who can't differentiate right from wrong, I would rather never become a deity. A nameless flame surged out from her chest. She no longer cared about the dog's-hit deity in front of her. In an instant, she released her aura, summoned her sword intent, and attacked the other party. A ding sound rang in her mind. As though something had been activated, her mind instantly became clear. Humph, that person basically did not place her resistance in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, he dispersed the sword intent she sent out, and wanted to release the pressure of a gold deity once again. However, he realized that it was reflected back. Not just her, the pressure on everyone present had disappeared as well. Earlier, she was completely unable to resist the crowd. Now, they had all recovered. This is? What did you do? That deity's expression turned cold as he stared at Zhu Yao at the center. Zhu Yao was startled as well. She simply remembered that she released something in a fit of anger earlier. After sensing it carefully, it was Dragon's Might? So Dragon's Might had such an effect as well. It could remove the suppression of deities from the higher realm. After taking a closer look, not only was the suppression gone, the rain of flowers that fell from the lower realm because of the two of them had disappeared as well. Even the heavenly light that was enveloping the two of them had begun to shake. Since we're going to die, let's fight it out with them. Someone shouted out, and a figure charged forward. The remaining people were stunned for a moment, before they summoned their weapons one after another, charging forward without any regard for their lives. Humph! Overestimating yourselves. That deity coldly snorted. Evidently, he did not place these practitioners of the lower realm in his eyes at all. An instant later, a gigantic formation was formed in the sky. Blazing fireballs endlessly shot out from the formation towards the crowd. The flames were extremely scorching, and the moment they touched their bodies, not even their bones would remain. Even if they fell into the sea, they would not be able to extinguish them, instantly turning into a sea of flames. One after another, they fell into the sea. The difference in strength was too great. They were basically not their match at all. However, after all, there were only two of them. As the saying goes, ants can bite an elephant to death when there are enough of them. Unavoidably, the two of them had areas that they could not take care of. A hint of impatience began to appear on the two's faces. However, because they still had to protect the unconscious Yuhanshin and the heavily injured Chihan, it would still be a little inconvenient. Furthermore, the people present were fighting without any regard for their lives, and there were even quite a number of people who chose to self-destruct to attack. Even if they were deities, they were unable to retreat unscathed. And there was still 15 minutes before the World Purification Sacred Talisman would activate. If they did not return to the higher realm now, they would be dragged down as well. The heavenly light that was guiding them to the higher realm was already growing dimmer. If they did not return now, there would definitely be an unforeseen event. The two of them looked at each other, and then, one on the left and one on the right, unleashed a full-powered attack, knocking away the people around them. Bringing Yuhanshin and Chihan along, they flew towards the end of the heavenly light. Just as they were about to enter the heavenly gate, suddenly, a loud roar resounded. Like a curtain of green light, it instantly enveloped them. It instantly dispersed the heavenly light completely. A few crisp cracking sounds could be heard. Chapter 134. The two of them never expected that the five-elemental heavenly lightning that was specially invited from Lightning Divine Hall was unable to completely stop the devil's resurrection, and it was even before the World Purification Talisman was fully activated. More importantly, that strange green light had even dispersed the heavenly light of ascension. The moment the heavenly light disappeared, the two deity monarchs from the higher realms suffered from the backlash of the heavenly Tao and puked out blood. Their cultivation levels, which could not be seen through earlier, began to rapidly regress, dropping from the gold deity level to the demigod level, and it was still falling. The heavenly gate instantly closed as well. This was the heavenly Tao. Though she did not know how they managed to open the heavenly gate and retain their cultivation levels in the lower realm, this world could not accommodate people from the higher realm. Hence, the moment the heavenly light of ascension disappeared, the heavenly Tao would naturally send them back to a cultivation level suitable for this world. Ho ho ho! A sinister laughter sounded. The white-clothed man who was still quietly sitting within the green light earlier had already stood up. The green light had already slowly faded away, and a pair of crimson eyes flashed with a cold light. The light prison which enveloped his surroundings and prevented him from absorbing the devilic energy was currently shattering bit by bit, revealing a face with long hair, crimson eyes, and a sinister smile. The aura around his body was terrifying. Zhu Yao's heart clenched. Without even thinking, she summoned her sword intent, circulated all the spiritual energy in her body, and attacked him with all her might. However, the man merely lifted the corner of his lips, and his entire being grew even more sinister. Reaching out a hand, he flicked his finger, dispersing the sword intent lightning phoenix that had gathered all of Zhu Yao's spiritual energy. Zhu Yao could no longer use a single strand of spiritual energy. If Sesame had not caught her in time, she would have fallen into the sea. She had never felt so powerless before, and a single word surfaced in her heart. It's over. That devil called Phantom Smile grew even more sinister. In a flash, he appeared 3 steps away from her. Zhu Yao was already prepared to die. As expected, with a tap of his feet, he pounced towards her, kicked Sesame aside, and then hugged onto her thigh. Lord. A trembling voice sounded. Phantom half knelt in front of her and began to crazily rub against her thigh. He began to rub against her legs. My lord, Bunbun likes you so much. Zhu Yao, sesame, everyone. My lord, do you like Bunny? Rabbit your sister. What kind of godly development is this? Who can explain this to me? You. Zhu Yao was almost unable to find her mother tongue. Aren't you Phantom? Aren't you a demon? Hey, stop playing around. What's with this sudden change of character at such a tense moment? The man who was trying to hug her thigh was stunned. He raised his head and looked at her excitedly with his sparkling eyes. My lord, do you know Bunny's name? Bunny is so happy. Yo, your sister. What the hell was this? Venerable? The others were all dumbfounded. They glanced at Zhu Yao and then looked at the man on her thigh who was convulsing. He. Just what in the world is? I don't know either. Zhu Yao instantly had the urge to jump into the sea and die. Looking at the devil beneath her feet who had evidently taken the wrong script, she really wanted to stab her own eyes. Wait a minute. Why did this scene feel so familiar? In this world, there was only one person who would call her master without asking for a reason. Your body is that of a demonic beast? Phantom nodded. Then, he called out, Master. Then what's your original form? Phantom was startled for a moment, before revealing a smile at her. In a flash, a gigantic rabbit instantly appeared in front of Zhu Yao. It was so tall that it was about to touch the sky. In the blink of an eye, the rabbit immediately disappeared again, turning back into that white-clothed man. It continued to hug her thigh, and as it rubbed against her, it even let out a satisfied cry. Meow. Meow your sister, be a good rabbit, hey? Why did a good devil turn into a rabbit? Why did a good deity's body turn into a demonic beast? What happened to the promised by Mion's divine residence? Wait a minute, that divine residence looked like it had existed for a very long time, so it must have fallen for many years. It was understandable for a few words to be missing, then by Mion. The hell, it's a white rabbit. It was just a stroke missing. This was a rabbit deity's divine residence, so it was understandable that its original form was that of a rabbit. Hence, devil equals rabbit deity equals demonic beast, and she was of the dragon race. Hence, bloodline suppression. She had to admit that this rabbit deity was really good at tricking devils. My lord, let Bunny be your contracted bestial beast, all right? No, you're a man, yet you call yourself Bunny. Don't you feel ashamed? My lord. The little trembling voice continued to tremble. Shut up. She could sense the evil intentions of the entire world. Tell me, just how powerful is the bloodline suppression of the dragon race? Could it be that you're a devil as well? One of the deity monarchs who was filled with arrogance earlier pointed at Zhu Yao with a fearful look. That devil actually called her my lord. Only the devil monarchs of the devil realm could be called my lord by a devil. Could it be that all of the devils had appeared in the world? She's a devil as well. Hurry and kill her. Why aren't you guys making a move? The deity monarch who had already fallen to the late-stage nascent soul stage had long been suppressed by the remaining people. However, he still did not give up and tried to incite the crowd. Unfortunately, no one cared about him. Earlier, their world-destroying operation had already angered the crowd. That purple gold talisman had yet to stop as well, so who would listen to him? Zhu Yao simply replied him with 2 words. Ho ho. Don't let your imagination run wild, youngster. Junior martial sister you. Just what is this devil? Fengyi looked at her with a confused look as well. I don't really understand either. Zhu Yao honestly said, but I'm certain that he will no longer bring disaster to this world in the future. Fengyi still had a confused look. Zhu Yao raised her head and looked at the purple gold talisman that was still constantly spreading in the sky. Her brows deeply furrowed. World-destroying talisman. Phantom. Zhu Yao pulled up the former devil who was still hugging her thigh. Reaching out her hand, she tapped on the center of his forehead and said with emphasis on every single word, "In the name of your Lord, I order you. From today onwards, your soul is not to leave this body, nor are you allowed to harm the lives of others. Until the three realms collapse, until primal chaos descends once again." A ray of golden light shot straight into the center of his brows. Phantom was startled. A moment later, he took a step back and deeply bowed towards her. This subordinate understands. Using her blood essence as a guide, the bloodline contract established was something no demonic beast could defy. Though the bloodline suppression of the dragon race could restrain the devil's nature, this order, as long as he was still alive, he could not defy it. Though the devil had been dealt with, if that world-destroying talisman was not stopped, this world would still be finished. However, how could a talisman that had already been activated be stopped before it was completed? Zhu Yao took a deep breath. She had no choice but to give it a try. Raising her head, she looked at the talisman. Sesame. Circulating her own aura, Zhu Yao instantly transformed into her dragon form, while Sesame returned to her divine sense at the same time. The moment her true form was revealed, everyone was dumbfounded. They looked at the dragon body that was so huge that it could connect the entire sky and earth with a look of disbelief. If there were still people who doubted her identity earlier, at this moment, all of them had already been dispelled. Dragon. Dragon. The two immortal monarchs who were being restrained were even more dumbfounded. They never expected that the woman whom they were suspecting just a moment ago, not only was she not a devil, she was the legendary archenemy, the god race. The entire world had already turned purple. That world-destroying talisman had already been completely activated. Violent winds blew, sand and stones flew everywhere. The center of the talisman emitted out a golden light. Some sort of powerful energy was currently surging out from within, and it looked like it was about to explode in all directions. Zhu Yao had already flown onto the talisman with her powerful dragon form. She swallowed it in one gulp. Naturally, she was unable to digest it. However, she was a dragon after all. Even if she did not receive any inheritance from the god race, her body was still as strong as before. However, this was, after all, an energy that could destroy the world. No matter how strong it was impossible for her to completely block it. Hence, she could only watch as the talisman exploded in her body. She watched as her own flesh and blood splattered, and the energy that leaked out spread in all directions. She watched as a large amount of seawater in the entire ocean instantly disappeared and spread outwards in a circular shape. Only when the entire ocean's seawater was swept away by the energy did it stop. Then, she saw that despicable conversation window again. Congratulations, you have entered the palace for the 4th time. Please choose, resurrect, resurrect, or resurrect. Flip's table. 3 people appeared and chose the same option. Was there any meaning to it? Was there any meaning to it? Zhu Yao took a deep breath. Though the entire ocean had been roasted dry, at the very least, she had stopped the world extermination talisman. She casually tapped on revive. In an instant, her vision darkened. She once again returned to that pitch-black world with a single loading bar. Her heart instantly clenched for a moment, as though a layer of something that had been covering her the entire time had been peeled off. She felt as though she could barely breathe. Seeing that the loading bar was about to reach the end, Zhu Yao took a deep breath. Realm Spirit, I know you're here. Come out for a moment, let's talk about life. The loading bar paused and stopped at the 99% mark. As though the pause button had been pressed, the surroundings were unusually quiet. Stop hiding, I know it's you. Come out right now. A moment later, the loading bar flashed, and then it instantly disappeared. Then, in the vast black world, a ding suddenly sounded, and an interface popped out. A QQ chat interface. Realm Spirit, dear, long time no see, dear. Did you miss me, dear? Zhu Yao suddenly had the urge to scold someone. Realm Spirit. What's the matter, dear? I'll tell you everything I know, dear. Your sister. Just who are you? Realm Spirit. I'm your good friend. Realm Spirit. I've always been with you, dear. I've always been with you, dear. I've always been with the god of death, right? Every time he died, he would only see these strange chat windows. If not for her roar this time, he might have decided to never come out again. Why did you bring me here? Why do you want me to fix the damn bug? Realm Spirit was silent for a moment. Only then did the QQ interface floating in the sky display a message. Realm Spirit, you promised me before you'll help me fix the bug. Friends should help each other, you know? Help your sister. Is this how you ask others to help you? How many times has this old lady died already? Just what's your goal? Realm Spirit, I just want you to help me out. As you can see, there are many problems in this world. Big bro, I'm just a game planner. It's fine if you want me to come up with some game plans, but if you want me to save the world, and it's even a cultivation world, I really can't afford it. Realm Spirit. But you're doing really well. Well, my ass. I've already gambled with a few lives. If this continues, I'll collapse sooner or later. Realm Spirit. Then, do you want to return to your original world? Chapter 135. Of course, she wanted to go back to her original world. There was her family, her friends, and everything she was familiar with. She couldn't wait to return there, but when the time came, she suddenly hesitated. Can you really send me back? Realm Spirit, I can't. Then why the hell did you ask? She hesitated for a moment. Realm Spirit, not now, but maybe in the future. What do you mean? Do you want to adjust the taste? Just as Zhu Yao was about to ask, she suddenly saw the conversation window shake for a moment. Then, on the right side of the window, there was an additional option to receive a file. The file's name was Return Gift Pack. There were 4 more choices: Accept, Preview, Save As, and Cancel. Did it have to be so high-end? How much did Penguin pay you? Realm Spirit, I'm not lying to you. I've already made all the preparations for your return. It's just that I'm temporarily unable to send you back. Zhu Yao hesitated for a moment before tapping on the additional word Preview. In an instant, another light screen appeared beside her. On that light screen, there was an icicle as tall as a person, and within that icicle was a woman. Isn't this me? The frozen woman looked exactly the same as her original appearance. Realm Spirit, your body was already destroyed, so I prepared a new one for you. Of course, as the grand prize, I got rid of some of the minor problems of this body, such as breast hyperplasia, irregular menstruation, ulcers, constipation. Shut up. How many problems did her original body have? Realm Spirit. Anyway, when you go back, you will feel great. Zhu Yao took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Tell me honestly, what are you trying to do? Who are you? Why do I have to fix these bugs? He suddenly fell silent. For a long time, no new words appeared on the dialogue box. Just when she thought he would remain silent forever, the next sentence finally popped up. Realm Spirit. I can't say it now, but you'll naturally understand everything in the future. Wasn't that obvious? Then will I see you in the future? I mean the real you? Even though he had known him for a few years in the modern world, he had never met him. His master said that he could make a person be reborn infinitely. It could be a powerhouse from the upper realm, but until now, she knew nothing about him. Realm Spirit. Sure. How many bugs do I have to fix? Realm Spirit did not answer directly. Realm Spirit. These bugs are limited. The more bugs you fix, the more of my abilities I can recover. The closer you are to home. Judging from his tone, it probably wasn't just 1 or 2. However, it was good that he knew. She was really afraid that this kind of thing would never end. Then can you tell me? What will I become in the next version? First a baby, then a man. In the end, he wasn't even a human anymore. Seeing that we're considered good friends, can you give me a better avatar? Realm Spirit, of course, of course. I guarantee that the next sock puppet will be unprecedented. She was definitely loved by everyone who saw her. Flowers bloomed and cars bloomed. Be it men or women, old or young. No matter how to get rid of your charm, you as a treasure, neither abandoning nor leaving. Really? Why does it sound so Mary Sue? Realm Spirit, you have to trust me, friend. Trust my ass. It was because she mistakenly trusted him that she ended up in this godforsaken place. She died and died, died and died again, and continued to die. All right, hurry and send me to the next filming location. This guy's mouth was so tight. Most probably, she wouldn't get any results even if she continued asking. Zhu Yao waved her hand and canceled the acceptance of that homecoming gift. Realm Spirit, have a safe journey. He sent a bye-bye emoji. In the next moment, the loading bar once again appeared. Just as she was about to reach the halfway point, Zhu Yao finally could not help but ask, Realm Spirit, Wang Shuji, is he all right? The conversation window was silent for a moment. When the loading bar was about to finish, a picture was finally sent. It was a screenshot. It was an unfamiliar man. She had never seen him before, but she knew that it was Wang Shuji. He was currently wearing a wedding robe, smiling at another woman with a veil over her head. It seemed like they were in the middle of a wedding ceremony. Zhu Yao lightly heaved a sigh of relief. Ever since she entered this space, she had recalled everything. Her heart, which had been heavy the entire time, finally relaxed a little. That's good. I really hope that I can meet him again. With a ding sound, the loading bar finally finished. Zhu Yao instantly felt as though she was surrounded by a ray of white light. And in the dark space where Zhu Yao's figure was no longer present, a final line of words popped out from the conversation window. Realm Spirit, I will. The moment Zhu Yao woke up, she saw a blue sky. It was so blue that there wasn't a single impurity, and not even a single white cloud could be seen. She couldn't help but lament that this really was a good weather. She had to stretch her body. My ass. Why couldn't she move? No matter how her brain ordered her to get up, she was still lying on the ground, unable to move a single inch. She wanted to call for help, but realized that she couldn't even make a sound. Zhu Yao's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't have turned into a cripple, right? But even if she was a cripple, why couldn't she even move her head, hey? She couldn't feel a single thing in her body. What happened to the promised avatar that was loved by everyone? The one that would definitely be praised in history? Zhu Yao suddenly had the urge to drag Realm Spirit out and give him a good beating. Unfortunately, she couldn't do anything right now. She could only stare at the unchanging blue sky. And then it rained. And it was even raining heavily. However, she, who was completely unconscious, could not even feel the wetness. The rain lasted for exactly an hour, and after it ended, there was even a freaking flood. Zhu Yao felt that the entire world was shaking, and only then did she realize that she was currently being washed away by the water current. A lot of water filled her field of vision, and she knew that she was currently sinking as she moved. However, the strange thing was, she did not feel the slightest bit of suffocation from drowning. The water level did not rise for long, however. 10 or so minutes later, the shaking that she was being washed away finally stopped. The rain stopped, and she once again saw the cloudless blue sky. Zhu Yao felt that she had to think about life. Unfortunately, before she could finish her thoughts, a doubtful female voice suddenly sounded. What's that? The sound of rapidly approaching footsteps could be heard. In the next moment, a giant appeared in her field of vision. In her view, a giant was already as tall as the sky, and it was even a female giant. Zhu Yao was so frightened that her heart was about to jump out. No matter who it was, If they were to suddenly see a person whose eyes were even bigger than her head appear in front of them, they would definitely be frightened. Furthermore, this giant had clearly discovered her. Zhu Yao's first reaction was to hurriedly run. Mama's egg run my ass. She was basically unable to move at all. Even in a dangerous situation like this, she realized that she still could not feel her body at all. She could only watch as the giant reached out a gigantic palm and grabbed her up. She looked at her from head to toe. So dirty. That face that was as big as a basketball court frowned in disgust. Then, she raised her other hand and fiercely wiped her hair and face. She was treating her as a washboard. Zhu Yao instantly felt like crying, but no tears came out. However, no matter how she retorted in her heart, only when the female giant felt satisfied did she finally stop. Zhu Yao was a little glad that she could no longer feel anything. Otherwise, with this method of wiping, a layer of her skin would definitely fall off. After wiping it clean, it's pretty unique. That female giant muttered to herself, and then she grabbed onto her basketball court face as though she wanted to take a closer look. Her entire body could be seen in those eyes that were as big as a well. That squarish, snow-white, the hell. The moment she saw her own reflection in the female giant's eyes, Zhu Yao finally knew why she could not move. For some reason, she suddenly recalled the first sentence she said when her master descended to the lower realm the last time she saw him. "Great hero, do you lack a leg accessory?" Back then, she only said that because she wanted to hug his thigh, but she never expected. The hell, she really turned into a leg accessory. Furthermore, it was a square, snow-white jade pendant without the slightest flaw. Flip's table. Realm spirit, come out. I promise I won't beat you to death. Zhu Yao finally understood what was called the greatest evil intention. Why do I feel that this jade is a little darker than before? The woman flipped the jade that she accidentally picked up a few times, and with a doubtful look, she said, "It's clearly a divine jade. Why is the divine energy so weak?" "That's right. I'm a defective product. Hurry and smash me. Let me continue with version 6.0. Zhu Yao silently chanted. "Forget it." The woman did not mind, and casually stuffed the jade to her waist. "It's fate that I picked it up. It might be useful. Don't hesitate to smash me." Unfortunately, the woman could not hear the pleas in Zhu Yao's heart. She patted her waist in relief, and after confirming that she had placed it properly, she turned around and planned to leave this place. Only then did Zhu Yao clearly see that the place she was lying on earlier was merely a small ditch that was not even the width of 2 hands. After picking up a divine jade, the woman seemed to be very happy, and even her footsteps had become a lot more relaxed. Just as she took 2 steps, her face suddenly paled, as though she had discovered something, and she suddenly raised her head to look at the sky. In the next instant, a white figure instantly appeared 3 steps away from her. That was a man, handsome and outstanding, and his face was a little cold. Although he had restrained it, his entire body still emitted the aura of a superior. Only his pair of exceptionally bright eyes were staring straight at the woman in front of him. "Master!" Zhu Yao was so excited that she wanted to pounce over, but unfortunately, she could not move a single inch. The woman did not move, and looked at the person who suddenly stopped her with caution. Her eyes inadvertently looked at the unique pattern on his sleeves, and her eyes suddenly widened. That symbol was Yao. Yu Yin called out. His voice still did not have any warmth, but Zhu Yao could faintly hear the rise and fall of his tone. "You're finally here, Master." Zhu Yao suddenly had the urge to cry. However, she suddenly heard a female voice reply. "That's right." In the next moment, the woman who picked her up took a step forward and stood next to Yu Yin. And the master she had been thinking about was currently raising his hand and placed it on the woman's head. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.